Chapter 39:18. So much so that when the underworld's sacred flame was forcibly stripped from Luo Yunxiao's body and she was covered in cuts and bruises, there wasn't even a single person in the entire nether realm who could deliver medicine to her master. Now, Yin Yuanyi was disabled, but its master had successfully changed her fate. These people wanted to curry favor with his master again. How could there be such a good thing in this world? Master, you mustn't let these dogs off so easily. It's a good time to settle accounts with them. What did Mei Yanyan say before? If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I'll pull them up by the roots. He. I like it. Chiwen shouted excitedly as she bounced and rolled into his arms. By the way, Master, Mei Yanyan and the others still don't know that you've successfully changed your fate. When are we going to the floating island? I can't wait to see the expressions on those little guys' faces. Master, in the past, you were afraid of getting them into trouble, so you avoided the carefree sect. Now that I'm back, can I play with little Seven and the others for a long time? Master, you're too serious. You won't even take me to the brothels. When I go back this time, I'm going to ask Mei Yanyan and Xiao Qi to take me there. Fragrant beauties, here I come. Looking at his pet rolling on top of him while drooling, his mouth full of dirty words that could not be seen. For the first time, Luo Yunxiao didn't reprimand him. Instead, she softened her expression and said in a low voice, "All right, let's return to the floating island." He used the word back. To him, the nether realm was no longer his home. The Xiaoyao sect was his true home. Okay. Let's go find Mei Yanyan now. Ow. However, Luo Yunxiao bumped into Yin Wuji as soon as she walked out of the hall. His footsteps unconsciously paused. He did not salute, nor did he retreat. Instead, he lowered his eyes and stood where he was. When Yin Wuji saw him like this, a ball of anger rose in his eyes. Is this the attitude you should have toward your father? Don't you even know how to address me? Luo Yunxiao calmly called out, "Father." After a pause, he said, "I'm going to the floating island." What are you going to do? You're not allowed to go. Yin Wuji said angrily, "Obediently go into the house and lie down. Wait until the dark Yin holy flame in your body stabilizes to the peak of level 3 before you can leave." Luo Yunxiao looked up at him in surprise. Yin Wuji coughed lightly and looked away. He said coldly, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and enter the house. Let me see your injuries and your cultivation." Surprise flashed in Luo Yunxiao's eyes, but there was no change in her expression. "I want to go to the floating island. How dare you? How dare you disobey my orders?" Yin Wuji flew into a rage and charged over to beat him up. Fu Yushu, who had just rushed over, saw this scene and hurriedly rushed over to hug Yin Wuji's arm. She said anxiously, "Husband, what are you doing? Little Xiao has just succeeded in defying the heavens and changing her fate, so her body is still weak. What if you injure her with your palm?" As he spoke, he let go of Yin Wuji and hurried to Luo Yunxiao's side. He asked anxiously, "Little Xiao, are you hurt? Mother will call the doctor to treat you." Luo Yunxiao's expression was indifferent as she withdrew her arm that was being hugged. She took a step back and said, "I'm fine. I just want to go to the floating island." Fu Yushu's expression stiffened again. "Go to the floating island now? Why are you in such a hurry? Little Xiao, your body hasn't fully recovered yet." Chapter 39:19. Yin Wuji sneered, "What are you talking to him about? Just lock him up. Look at him, don't you think he's behaving like a son? I was kind enough to treat his injuries and wanted to entrust him with a heavy responsibility, but what did he do? He avoided me like a snake or a scorpion, as if I, his father, would harm him. Luo Yunxiao still lowered her eyes and did not speak, but the corners of her mouth curved into a mocking smile. Qi Wen, who was in the spirit beast bag, could not help but curse, "Damn! Shameless, too shameless." He said it as if he was not the one who used the restriction to control you and almost let Yin Yuanyi kill you. "Little Xiao, are you still blaming us for spoiling Yi and not treating you well?" Fu Yushu's tears suddenly fell. Her face was full of guilt and sadness. "I'm sorry, little Xiao, I'm sorry. I've let you suffer too much over the years. But we also have our own difficulties. I don't expect you to forgive us immediately, but at least give me some time to tell you the truth, okay?" Luo Yunxiao was stunned. The truth? What truth? Wasn't it because he was born to be a cruel person who would bring bad luck to his parents? Luo Yunxiao did not believe it when he was young. But one day, he was bullied by Yin Yuanyi, and the string of reason in his mind snapped. Then, his consciousness became chaotic and his memory blurred. When he woke up again, he was surrounded by corpses. There were thousands of bodies. There were maids and servants who served him in the palace of the netherworld. There were high-level immortals who protected Yin Yuanyi. There was also an old nanny who was specially sent by Fu Yushu to take care of him. There were corpses all over the ground, and blood flowed like a river, soaking his shoes, socks, and clothes. There was a broken hand at his feet, the old and skinny fingers clutching his ankle tightly. Not far away, the old nanny's twisted face was looking at him with fear and pleading. Her open mouth was stained with blood, as if she was crying and screaming silently. A day ago, the old nanny had gently stroked his head and asked him if the pastries she made for him were delicious. And he had killed this kind old woman with his own hands. Luo Yunxiao couldn't describe the fear and panic she felt at that time. He could not forget the look of fear and disgust in Yin Wuji and Fu Yushu's eyes when they hurried over. And they were ecstatic when they dug Yin Yuanyi out of the pile of corpses. At that moment, even Luo Yunxiao believed that she was a monster. A cruel, terrifying, and bloodthirsty monster that would lose control of itself at any time. Who would like a monster? Who would treat a monster as their own son? Because of that massacre, Luo Yunxiao had always hidden a trace of guilt and fear in her heart. He didn't dare to give his heart to anyone around him. He did not dare to defy Yin Wuji and Fu Yushu's request. He even accepted Yin Yuanyi's provocation and humiliation indifferently. It was not without pain or grievance. But no matter how wronged he was, how unwilling he was, so what? In the past, he didn't believe in fate, but in the end, it was more and more proven that he was just a monster. In this glorious and noble nether domain imperial court, others were always bustling and currying favor with one another. But he wasn't as lonely and cold as he was, and he didn't fit in with the hustle and bustle of the world. Until his master Xing Yuan appeared and gave him his first warmth. I wonder if Miss Xiao has ever heard of the Shen musicians. Luo Yunxiao's heart skipped a beat. She had to control herself so that she wouldn't show any abnormalities. He says lightly, I'm afraid there is no one in the Shushan continent who hasn't heard of the Shen musician. Fu Yushu nodded, a look of fear appearing on her face. Her voice trembled slightly. Back then, the Kamikaze sect dominated the three realms, sweeping through all obstacles. No one could resist them. Even the polar domain, the nether region, and the demon race were overshadowed. But later, someone discovered that there was a real monster hiding in the sect, a monster that could destroy the three realms and destroy all humans. Chapter 39-21. That's why all the forces in the Shushan continent, excluding the demon race, joined forces with Debii Temple, the polar domain, and the nether realm to slaughter the Shunla sect. Luo Yunxiao felt his throat dry up. After a long while, he heard himself ask in a hoarse voice, "What is that monster?" "It's the spirit of the Shinla sex treasure, the Tian Mo Qin. It's called Seven Brilliants." Fu Yushu paused, then said slowly, "It has another name, the Demon of Destruction." Luo Yunxiao's hands unconsciously clenched. Fu Yushu's voice also seemed to be near and far. In order to eliminate the Demon of Destruction, the entire Shushin continent paid a terrible price. Under all kinds of planning, the Demon of Destruction was lured into a formation and was about to be destroyed. But who knew that the demon would suddenly explode and destroy the formation? Hundreds of thousands of immortals died on the spot, and several of the Nether Realm's guardian elders died at that time. Later, Bodhidharma didn't hesitate to give up his own cultivation and join forces with Di Beixian, your father, and his 2 disciples to stop the Demon of Destruction's violence. But it was also then that we discovered that the Demon of Destruction couldn't be killed. At this point, a look of fear appeared on Fu Yushu's face. When the soul was shattered, the demon did not truly die. Instead, it turned into a ball of energy that could not be touched and dissipated into the world. When the time came, he would still make a comeback after accumulating enough filthy resentment. In order to completely eliminate the demon, Bodhidharma thought of a way. He used the Buddhist secret method of Daebi Temple to temporarily trap the Demon of Destruction, then searched the 3 realms to find a body that could contain the Demon of Destruction. Experiencing tribulations in the world of mortals, the joys and sorrows of life, the vicissitudes of life. Bodhidharma believed that killing, formations, and even curses were all insufficient to completely eliminate the demon that could destroy the world. Only the 7 emotions and 6 desires of human beings, as well as greed, anger, and hatred, could gradually dissolve and assimilate it until it was completely destroyed. This method was called the mortal ambush. Luo Yunxiao clenched his hands so hard that his nails dug into his palms. He looked at Fu Yushu and said word by word, "So, I'm that mortal ambush's vessel." Fu Yushu avoided his gaze, and tears unconsciously fell from her eyes. Yin Wuji could not help but say angrily, "Do you think this is what we want? The so-called red dust ambush kills the demons of the world, as well as the human relations of a vessel like you. Ever since the old monk put the world destroyer demon into your body, every divination he did was that we would die in your hands and the nether realm would be destroyed in your hands. I have my own son by my side, but I have to worry day and night that he will tear me to pieces one day. Do you think that makes me feel good? If not, I would have killed you with my own hands." Luo Yunxiao's expression was cold as the corners of her mouth curled into a mocking smile. "Father used me as a vessel to exchange for a lot of benefits, didn't he? You evil creature, Husband, calm down." Fu Yushu hurriedly stopped Yin Wuji and said anxiously, "Little Xiao has suffered so much over the years. It's natural for him to have complaints in his heart. Can't you be considerate of him?" Fu Yushu looked at Luo Yunxiao with pity and guilt, and said in a choked voice, "Little Xiao, it's father and mother who let you down. But there's a reason for this. Back then, Bodhidharma found many newborns and wanted to lead the demon of destruction into them, but none of them succeeded." Chapter 39-22. Later, the demon chose the unborn child in my womb, which is you, Xiao. At first, your father and I didn't agree, but the world was in danger, and the lives of thousands of creatures were in our hands. I really can't just stand by and watch as the apocalyptic demon destroys the 3 realms. Moreover, the demon had already merged with your soul. If it was forcibly extracted, even your soul would be destroyed. How could I bear to do that? Fu Yushu stretched out her cold and trembling hand and held Luo Yunxiao's hand. Her body trembled slightly and tears fell like rain. Fortunately, you've finally succeeded in changing your fate. Immortal Xin Yuan told us that the demon is no longer in your body. From now on, you're a normal person, my good son, and the only heir of the Nether Realm. God is merciful and has finally returned my son to me. Give father and mother a chance to compensate you, okay? In the next few days, Luo Yunxiao's treatment in the Nether Realm changed dramatically. The elders, attendants, and maids who used to treat him as invisible were all very respectful to him. Fu Yushu and Yin Wuji granted almost all of his requests. There was even one time when Yin Yuani, whose cultivation had been destroyed, rushed out and saw him. He went crazy and wanted to kill him, but he was also dragged away. It was as if their positions had been switched. Yin Yuani, who used to be arrogant, was now like a stray dog with its teeth pulled out and its legs broken. He was crazy and desperate. Luo Yunxiao, who used to not even have a name, was now the young master of the Nether Realm that everyone had high hopes for. In the Nether Realm, Qi Wen's chin was almost raised to the sky. Every day when she came back, she would report to him about her tyrannical deeds outside. But Luo Yunxiao did not feel happy. Because he could not leave the Nether Realm. Fu Yushu and Yin Wuji forced him to stay in the Shushan continent because his body had not recovered. The affection and warmth that he had longed for a lifetime was right in front of him, but Luo Yunxiao felt an indescribable loneliness in his heart. This is the 9 cups of snow lotus soup that I personally prepared for you. Have a taste. Fu Yushu looked at Luo Yunxiao tenderly, her face full of motherly radiance. Mother Xiao, you've grown so big in the blink of an eye. By the way, tomorrow your father will announce to the world that you have cultivated to the 3rd rank of the Netherine sacred flame. At that time, you will be appointed as the young lord of the Netherworld region. I believe no one will object. Luo Yunxiao frowned and said indifferently, I don't need it. Little Xiao. Fu Yushu grabbed his hand, her eyes filled with pleading. Xiao, I'm begging you. Give me and your father a chance to make it up to you, okay? Mother knows that your imperial father has gone overboard with you all these years, but he didn't do it on purpose. He was just afraid that one day, he would really die in the hands of his own son. Luo Yunxiao withdrew her hand. Her picturesque face was still calm and indifferent. Without waiting for him to speak, Fu Yushu suddenly said, Little Xiao, as long as you become the young lord of the Nether region, I will persuade your father to allow you to go to the floating island, okay? Luo Yunxiao's movement paused. The words that she wanted to say were stuck in her mouth. Fu Yushu could not help but chuckle softly. Her face revealed a mischievous expression. Little Xiao, I see that you always go to the floating island so diligently. Do you have a girl that you like? If you do, can you bring her back for me to see? Chapter 39-23. Fu Yushu said, As long as you really like her, even if I offend the demon clan, I will refuse the engagement for you and let you marry the girl you love. Luo Yunxiao showed a rare uneasy expression. He subconsciously turned his head and said faintly, No. Okay. Fu Yushu chuckled, then when Xiao has a sweetheart, you must tell me. I will help you. Don't pay too much attention to your father's words. Fu Yushu chatted for a while before leaving. When she reached the door, she suddenly stopped and said in a hoarse voice, I know my previous inaction has hurt your heart. But in my heart, you have always been my favorite child, the first little life that I have been looking forward to welcoming. I don't want to say sorry to you again. I just hope that you can believe me again. I love you. The door slowly closed. Luo Yunxiao's hands unconsciously clenched and then slowly loosened. His eyes, which had always been calm, were surging with uncontrollable emotions. Mother. This was the kinship that he had longed for all his life. From expectation to despair, from pain to numbness. He had given up and no longer hoped for it. But at this moment, it was sent to him again. Could he really believe it again? Outside the Nether Palace, it was once again surrounded by a dense crowd. "Welcome, Territory Master." With a shout, the huge palace gate slowly opened. Master, are you going to become the young master of the Nether Realm soon? Last time, Eni, that bastard, robbed your dark holy flame and showed off his power here. Now the tables have turned, and it is finally Master's turn to hold your head high. Luo Yunxiao's expression had been indifferent, without the slightest excitement and nervousness of being about to grasp great power. But Qi Wen's excited voice made his indifferent eyes tinge with a trace of gentleness. "Are you so happy?" "Of course I am happy. Are you not happy, Master? In the future, no one in the Nether Realm can bully Master. I can do whatever I want as long as I hold on to Master's thigh. Heh. At that time, I'll make those snobs become my horses." Inside the spirit beast bag, Qi kept blabbering non-stop with her big mouth, her bell-like eyes sparkling with a joyful and excited light. Was the position of young master of the Nether Realm really so attractive? Of course not. Qi didn't want to see her master being bullied or hurt in any way. It could never forget the endless pain Luo Yunxiao had to endure in the river of forgetfulness. He could not forget the despair his master felt when the dark holy flame was forcefully stripped from his body. Now everything was finally over. Now that his master had successfully changed his fate, no one would ever treat him as a monster again. He would have the best of everything in the world. Wasn't such a good master supposed to get the best of everything in the world? Qi thought to herself happily that this was all thanks to Mei Yan. If it wasn't for Mei Yan, how could Master find the yin-yang twin hearts, the 12 demons of Dutian, and the 36 stars so quickly? If it wasn't for Mei Yan, why would Master have such a strong desire to live? It would be great if Master could repay Mei Yan with his body. That way, he could sleep in Mei Yan's arms every day. Qi Wen's imagination ran wild, and she almost drooled. Chapter 39-24. Little Xiao, why are you walking so slowly? Come, I'll hold your hand. Fu Yushu's gentle voice came from the front. But Luo Yunxiao avoided it. Fu Yushu was not annoyed, but smiled and said, "Mother, little Xiao knows how to be shy. Let's go, your father is going to announce your identity to the world today." She turned around and pointed to the open palace door in front. "As long as you go through this palace door, little Xiao, you'll be the young master of the Nether region. Your future power will be limitless. Hurry and follow me." The light from her words shone in from the outside. It was accompanied by tsunami-like shouts and shouts. Luo Yunxiao slowly walked forward, step by step. When he crossed the high threshold of the palace door, a burning sensation came from his back. A dazzling flame suddenly sprang up behind him, flickering. That was the dark holy flame. The moment he crossed the palace door, the dark holy flame in his body was activated. Then, Luo Yunxiao heard a familiar voice. "Do it." The owner of the voice just called him Little Xiao with a smile and said, "You'll soon be the young master of the Nether region." But at this moment, it was full of careless cruelty. Luo Yunxiao closed his eyes because of the strong light. When he opened his eyes again, he saw a dense crowd of immortals surrounding him. Yin Wuji and Fu Yushu were leading them. Further outside were the elders of the Nether region, each of whom had the cultivation of a peak immortal king. Even so, it was still not enough. The entire Nether Palace, the huge square in front of the River of Forgetfulness, was densely packed with the Nether army. Luo Yunxiao's eyes turned and fell on Fu Yushu's face. looking at her quietly. Fu Yushu stretched out her hand and elegantly combed her messy hair. There was no trace of guilt on her face, only a shallow, noble and peaceful smile. Little Shao, I've let you down. Whether it's for the nether region or the living beings of the three realms, it's better for you to die. Qi Wen, who heard these words in the spiritual beast bag, felt like he was struck by lightning. He crawled out like a madman and screamed, Master has successfully changed his fate, why do you still treat him like this? Even a vicious tiger doesn't recognize its own child. Are you my master's parents? Luo Yunxiao looked at the murderous array that trapped her and listened to Qi Wen's hysterical questioning. Strangely, he couldn't feel any pain or sadness in his heart. On the contrary, he had guts. It was indeed so easy. Luo Yunxiao chuckled. Was it better for him to die? But to Yin Wuji and Fu Yushu, if they wanted to kill him, wouldn't it be as easy as turning over their hands? Why did she have to go around in circles and spend so much effort on him? Over the past month, she had been constantly putting on a show of the deep love between mother and son. Deep love between father and son. Why bother? Luo Yunxiao asked. Yin Wuji immediately revealed his ferocity and said angrily, Do you think I'm willing to put on an act in front of a vile creature like you? Do you think I would let you live to this day if I could kill you so easily? He thought of all the years of fear and humiliation he had endured. Monstrous hatred surged in Yin Wuji's heart. In the beginning, he still had guilt and affection for his son, Luo Yunxiao. Following the days, months, and years of being on tenterhooks, fear, and panic, that bit of affection had long since been wiped clean, leaving behind only a thick sense of disgust and hatred. Chapter 39-25. He took a deep breath, and the ferocity on his face gradually faded. Today, I can finally get rid of you. Yin Wuji's eyes flashed with the joy of having his wish fulfilled. There was urgency, fear, and resentment, but not a trace of affection. Luo Yunxiao closed her eyes and said calmly, Didn't you say that I've successfully changed my fate? Fu Yushu shook her head gently and sighed. Shao, there's no such thing as defying the heavens and changing your fate. Lu Xinyuan couldn't bear to see you in despair, so he left you a little hope. I thought you would never be able to find those things. I didn't expect that you would actually find the yin-yang twin heart. She slowly raised her head and met Luo Yunxiao's gaze. Her voice was low and cold. Your fate can't be changed, but the yin-yang twin hearts, the 12 evils of Dutian, and the 36 stars are all treasures that can only be found by luck. You took them all into your body, and Lu Xinyuan helped you complete the heaven-defying formation. Your strength and the energy in your body are all out of control. If you don't die, it'll be us and the entire nether region that will die. Luo Yunxiao laughed softly. So, the truth you told me before was still a lie. Why? Even if it's not easy to kill me, you don't have to play with me for a month, do you? The young man's appearance was peerlessly handsome. At this moment, his figure was thin and his face was pale. When he smiled faintly, there was an indescribable fragility and loneliness. It made people want to bring the best things in the world to him. Qi Wen was so distressed and angry that she was about to cry. If Luo Yunxiao hadn't held her down tightly, she would have rushed out and scratched the couple's faces. Fu Yushu's cold eyes finally showed some reluctance. Little Shao, you have to believe that your mother's expectations and love for you were real. But the heavens make fools of people. From the moment you were chosen as the vessel, it was already destined that we would fight to the death. For 100,000 years, this reincarnation has always been like this. There has never been an exception. Luo Yunxiao's pupils shrank slightly. For 100,000 years, it has always been like this. Fu Yushu said, You are the vessel of the demon of destruction. Mother didn't lie to you about this. However, what's sealed in your body isn't the complete apocalyptic demon, but the apocalyptic demon's half-soul. Half-soul, Luo Yunxiao murmured in a low voice. That distant and indistinct voice seemed to echo in her mind. If you and I are of the same mind, then lend me your strength temporarily. I don't want to destroy the world, I don't want to take revenge on the humans, I don't want anything, I just want to protect this woman in front of me. If he was a world-destroying half-soul, where is the other half? Was it on Mu Yen? As Luo Yunxiao thought about this in a daze, Fu Yushu's voice continued to ring in her ears. 100,000 years ago, the world destroyer was split into two by an ancient almighty. One half fled and disappeared into the heavens and earth. Later on, it was the 7 demons that were raised by the Kamikaze sect. The other half had been kept in a container, experiencing the red dust ambush, again and again, and finally completely melted and destroyed. And little Xiao, you are the last host of the red dust ambush. Before you, there were hundreds and thousands of people who were chosen as hosts. In the beginning, Bodhidharma also thought of using gentle persuasion to reform the world destroyer's half-soul, so that it could destroy the evil karma in its body and eliminate the calamity. Chapter 39-26. But no matter if the host is male or female, gentle and kind, or intelligent and indifferent, there is only one ending in the end. Those hosts will be assimilated by the demon of world annihilation. In the end, they will kill their wives, children, and parents, ending all their karma and love. After cutting off the path of reincarnation, the demon of world annihilation will break out of their bodies. 10,000 years later, Bodhidharma finally gave up this idea and changed to a real killing in the mortal world. He will let the host taste the fickleness of the world and experience the most painful resentment, hatred, separation from love, and unattainable desires. He will use the pain and intense emotional fluctuations of the host to wear down the energy of the demon of world annihilation little by little. Every few hundred years, as the host's negative emotions accumulate and can no longer seal the half-soul, he will kill the host ahead of time and send him into Bodhidharma's formless karma cauldron. But even though they had made thorough preparations, over the years, there were still many hosts who suddenly killed at the last moment, almost slaughtering a family next to them and even an entire city. The power of the half-soul annihilation host and it lost control was almost unimaginable. This was also the reason why Yin Wuji and Fu Yushu had always been so afraid of Luo Yunxiao. Why are you talking nonsense with him? Yin Wuji said coldly. His life was given by us. What's the problem with returning it to him now? As he spoke, Yin Wuji raised his hand and a small golden cauldron floated in his palm. The golden cauldron emitted a dazzling light. Luo Yunxiao immediately felt his mind become chaotic. There seemed to be countless wooden fish sounds and Sanskrit chants ringing in his mind at the same time. He immediately frowned and subconsciously wanted to retreat. But he had just taken a step. Behind him, countless attacks swept out like a storm. Master, watch out! Blood splattered everywhere. The 11 natal swords instantly rushed out to protect their master. For a moment, they were locked in battle with the elders of the netherworld. Yin Wuji looked at this scene and suddenly clenched the formless karma cauldron in his hand, fear growing in his heart. These elders were all at the peak of the immortal king realm. But now, Luo Yunxiao did not use the dark Yin holy flame, but only the 11 natal swords, and was easily able to resist. If he wasn't killed today, in the future, he would end up just like the souls of those world-destroying demons. Yin Wuji's divine sense moved, and he was about to draw his weapon. However, Fu Yushu was one step ahead of him. She pressed down on his hand and gave him a look. She walked forward step by step and her gaze fell on Luo Yunxiao who was riddled with scars. Her lips curled into a gentle and elegant smile. Little Xiao, are you filled with hatred right now? You clearly didn't do anything wrong, but you became the vessel of the demon of destruction, a monster that will lose its humanity at any time. Are you feeling indignant? You obviously have a father and a mother, and your talent is outstanding. You should have a successful life and be sought after by tens of thousands of people. But for no reason, he became the host of the mortal tribulations and never felt any happiness in his life. Luo Yunxiao's spiritual sense, which was controlling the 11 natal swords, trembled. His hands unconsciously clenched into fists. The sound of the Sanskrit and the wooden fish grew louder. Fu Yushu's eyes lit up and she continued, you have someone you like, but you still dare to love, but don't dare to pursue. Because as long as the half-soul of the world-destroying demon is in your body, you will be a monster that will lose your mind at any time. When that day comes, you will kill your loved ones with your own hands. We are like this, and the woman you love will not be able to escape that fate. Chapter 39-27. For the past month, I've been taking good care of you. I've personally cooked medicine for you every day. Did you feel touched for a moment? Do you really think I still see you as my son? In fact, I just pity you. I pity you that you've never tasted family love until death. Little Xiao, what's the point of living with such a person? It's like living in the darkest underground, never seeing the sun, never seeing hope. You should hate us, hate Bodhidharma, hate everything in this world. Even if you die, you want to drag us down with you, don't you? Luo Yunxiao's face was flushed, and the corners of his eyes trembled slightly. The 11 natal swords seemed to feel their master's mood and made a buzzing sound. Whoosh! A ball of black and blue flames sprang up from Luo Yunxiao's body and spread out. The holy dark flame, it's the holy dark flame. Retreat! Those who were touched by the flames, including the immortal king elders, all turned pale. They no longer cared about attacking and hurriedly operated their immortal power to resist the invasion of the flames. As for the soldiers below the Xian immortal level, as soon as they were touched by the flames, they immediately let out shrill screams. For a moment, everyone retreated, looking at Luo Yunxiao in horror. The usually cold and indifferent young man's eyes were now stained with a little scarlet. His whole body was surrounded by black flames. It caused his handsome and elegant brows to carry a hint of coquettishness. 11 long swords circled around his body, and then gradually transformed into a single sword in his slender and fair palm. Luo Yunxiao held the long sword and walked step by step towards Fu Yushu and Yin Wuji. He said in a hoarse voice, since this is what you want, I will fulfill your wish. These days, she had tried every means to appease him and then suddenly turned against him, causing him to fall from heaven to hell. Now, every word she said was heartfelt. Everything Fu Yushu did was to force out the negative emotions in Luo Yunxiao's heart. In this way, the mortal tribulation could be considered complete, and the greatest power of the formless karma cauldron could be exerted. The days and nights of suffering and fear over the past few years. And she had witnessed the bloody battlefield left behind by the host body of annihilation. Fu Yushu's urgency to get rid of this son was no less than Yin Wuji's. Yin Wuji at least had a strong enough cultivation to protect himself, but what about her? She was only an early-stage immortal king realm woman, and didn't have any great divine abilities. Once Luo Yunxiao launched an attack, the Nether Realm's elders wouldn't be the first to protect her. Therefore, on the surface, Fu Yushu was gentle and compassionate towards her son, and even showed a strong sense of guilt and helplessness. But in reality, she wanted him dead more than anyone else. In the past, the host of Red Dust Ambush had been deliberately suppressed, ostracized, humiliated, and tortured. Usually, it was already the limit for them to last 100 or 200 years. When Fu Yushu and Yin Wuji agreed to use their eldest son in exchange for benefits, they also thought that they only needed to endure for a few decades or a century. Who knew that 100 years had passed, 200 years had passed, 500 years had passed, they hated their son more and more. They hated the humiliation more and more, but he persisted year after year. Intimacy and betrayal. Get and lose. They had made Luo Yunxiao taste the harshest torture in the world, and they had made him suffer unbearable pain. But from the beginning to the end, his mind was not completely contaminated by the negative and dark emotions. Chapter 39-28. From the beginning to the end, he had no strong hatred, no determination to destroy the world. He just bore it indifferently and meekly. What frightened Yin Wuji and Fu Yushu even more was that Luo Yunxiao's strength was getting stronger and stronger, so strong that ordinary suppression was no longer effective. Yin Yuanyi, who had made him suffer, hated him crazily, but did not dare to be presumptuous in front of him. When Luo Yunxiao obtained the inheritance of the Netherworld Saint Emperor, the inheritance that had been transferred to Yin Yuanyi returned to him, which made Yin Wuji and Fu Yushu's fear reach its peak. Luo Yunxiao had to die. If he did not die, one day it would be them who would die. Bang! The blood mist exploded, and a strong smell of blood filled the air. Chiwen and the spiritual beast bag screamed and wanted to rush out, but was sealed by Luo Yunxiao's divine power. Chiwen's voice was hoarse, and her tears had almost dried up, but there was nothing she could do. She could only watch her master, who had always been bright and noble, fall to the ground, covered with cuts and bruises, and be trampled into the mud by someone. Yin Wuji's face was a little pale. Looking at the burns on his body, the blue veins on his forehead kept throbbing. Damn it! When had the strength of this evil creature become so strong? Immortal Venerable, they were both immortal venerables. He had entered the immortal venerable realm 1,000 years earlier than Luo Yunxiao. But now, Luo Yunxiao was actually able to fight evenly with him. If he hadn't had the formless karma cauldron, given by Bodhidharma, if he hadn't had the foresight to gather all the elders and elite soldiers of the nether realm, he might really have died in the hands of this little beast today. My husband, are you all right? With tears in her eyes, Fu Yushu took out some medicinal powder and sprinkled it on Yin Wuji's wounds. But Yin Wuji violently waved it away. It's all your fault. When this evil creature was young, I said that I would use thunderous means to make him reach the state of resonance as soon as possible with the world-destroying half-soul. But you were too soft-hearted and insisted on a slow and steady flow. Now, it's great. We almost nurtured a tiger and brought up a beast that killed the emperor and his father. Fu Yushu's lips trembled as tears streamed down her cheeks. She said in an aggrieved tone, it was Bodhidharma who said that if the mortal ambush could last a little longer, this might be the last time. Moreover, I gave birth to little Xiao after 10 months in my womb. How could I bear to? Meeting Yin Wuji's furious gaze, Fu Yushu's body trembled. She hurriedly said, it's a good thing that we've finally made it. Once we put the world-destroying half-soul into the phaseless karma cauldron, we can give Bodhidharma an explanation. Yin Wuji snorted coldly. With some difficulty, he raised the formless karma cauldron in his hand and hung it upside down above Luo Yunxiao. The wounds caused by the dark Yin holy flame could not be healed in a short time. Not only did the flames burn his body, but his soul as well. The extreme pain and the joy of being freed caused Yin Wuji to reveal a sinister and twisted smile. He injected his divine sense into the formless karma cauldron. A buzzing sound could be heard. The cauldron began to emit a dazzling golden light. Countless golden lights pierced through Luo Yunxiao's body like thousands of steel wires. Fresh blood dyed her already dirty clothes red. Even with Luo Yunxiao's endurance, she could not help but let out a painful cry. Qi Wen, who was in the spiritual beast bag, was going crazy. Chapter 39-29. It shouted for its master over and over again, desperately trying to get out of the spirit beast bag. But even at this moment, Luo Yunxiao's last bit of divine power was still firmly sealing the spirit beast bag, not letting it out. Master! Master! Qi Wen's voice was hoarse as she sobbed. Her bell-like eyes were already dyed red with madness and hatred. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. How could you do this to my master? What did his master do wrong? What did the world-destroying half-soul and the mortal ambush have to do with his master? Whether the world was destroyed or not, what did it have to do with his master? His master had always been so good. He had never harmed anyone and had never done anything evil. Why did he have to suffer all of this? Blood flowed out of Luo Yunxiao's trembling body, soaking the spirit beast bag hanging on his waist. Even though they were separated by space, Qi Wen seemed to smell the pungent smell of blood. It was the smell of death. It was the smell of destruction. Once the world-destroying half-soul was taken out, his master would definitely die. Qi Wen's red eyes slowly widened, and his body in the spirit beast bag trembled violently. No! Master couldn't. The world-destroying half-soul could not be taken out. Master, Master! Can you hear me? I'm Qi Wen. Do you remember? You promised to take me back to the floating island. We're going to see Mei Yanyan and those brats from the Xiaoyao sect. If they knew that you successfully changed your fate, they would be so happy. Mei Yanyan sacrificed so much to find the yin-yang twin heart, the 12 evils, and the 36 stars for you. In order to help you change your fate, these little fellows almost lost their lives. Master! Master, you still have the Xiaoyao sect. Yin Wuji and Fu Yushu don't want you, the Nether region doesn't want you, but Mei Yanyan and the others do. Have you forgotten? You're their most important martial uncle. Only the Xiaoyao sect is Master's home. Master, did you hear me? The hoarse voice rang out again and again, and was transmitted over and over again. Qi Wen didn't know if his master could still hear him. It only knew that it couldn't give up. If even it gave up, who else could save its master? Master, let's go back to the Xiaoyao sect. Let's go home, okay? Home. Amidst the boundless pain and torture, Luo Yunxiao heard a vague and distant voice. How could he have a home? A vessel for a demon that could destroy the world, a monster that everyone feared and even his own parents despised. The world was so big, where would he find a home? May we live forever in this life and night, free and unfettered forever. Little martial uncle, what is your true identity? Do you have any powerful enemies? What kind of past did he have? We don't care about that. All we know is that you are our junior uncle, and a member of the Carefree sect. The Xiaoyao sect is our home. The Xiaoyao 7 disciples and junior martial uncle are indispensable. We don't have a master anymore. We don't want to see youngest martial uncle leave us forever. Little martial uncle, Yin Wuji isn't your family, but we are. Will you come home with me? How could this be? Yin Wuji's expression suddenly changed. He looked at the formless karma cauldron in his hand in disbelief. The dazzling golden light it emitted began to slowly dissipate. Chapter 39-30. The sound of the wooden fish and Buddhist chants that had been echoing between heaven and earth also gradually faded. Fu Yushu's body could not stop trembling, her face pale. She looked in disbelief at Luo Yunxiao, who was lying in a pool of blood. He has not reached resonance with the world-destroying half-soul. How is this possible? He has been deceived like this. Why has his soul not been completely dyed black? This is impossible. Absolutely impossible. Fu Yushu suddenly rushed over like she had gone crazy, kicking Luo Yunxiao. Why? Why do you still persist? I have never treated you as a son. I want you to die. I only hate that you were never born. In my heart, you are not even as good as a dog. Don't you hate? Don't you hate to the point that you want to kill me, want to kill the entire world? Ah! She suddenly took out a silver hook and viciously stabbed at Luo Yunxiao's shoulder blade, piercing the bone and locking the soul. The pain was unbearable. This was the bone-piercing soul hook. As long as this hook was pierced through a person's ribs, the silver chain would automatically wrap around the heart and dantian of the cultivator. And then kill. Luo Yunxiao had the world-destroying half-soul in his body and could not be killed. But he endured the pain of the bone-piercing soul hook without missing a beat. Fu Yushu pulled out the bone-piercing soul hook and smashed it down again and again. Her face was ferocious and filled with tears. Luo Yunxiao, I beg you to let me go. Let us go, please. You hate me. You fused with the world-destroying half-soul. Why are you still not willing to let me go? How long are you going to pester me? Yin Wuji's hand that was holding the formless karma cauldron could not stop trembling. His eyes were filled with unconcealable fear, regret, and hatred. The elders of the nether region, and even the hard-hearted elite soldiers, could not help but retreat. They could not bear to see such a scene. Yu Chen's hands clenched and he bitterly closed his eyes. Why had he chosen the First Highness as the host? Such outstanding talent, such a persevering and kind nature. If he was the lord of the nether region, how good would that be? But it was too late to say anything now. Come! Yin Wuji suddenly roared angrily. Take the Empress to the palace to rest. Send this vile spawn into the prison, to be tortured day and night. I don't believe he can last forever. Just like that, the bone-perforating soul hook lock was left in Luo Yunxiao's body, which was riddled with holes. It locked his cultivation, locked his heart, and locked his soul. Fu Yushu's hair was disheveled and her face was covered in tears and mucus. She couldn't even stand straight and had to be moved away from him. The two elders of the nether realm obeyed the order and stepped forward. They grabbed Luo Yunxiao's hands and dragged her up from the ground. Even though Luo Yunxiao was in such a state, they did not dare to lower their guard. The scene that happened just now had given them too much shock and fear. However, an unforeseen event happened at this moment. Luo Yunxiao, who was lying in a pool of blood, suddenly soared into the sky. Yin Wuji and the elders of the nether realm were caught off guard, and an opening was made in the encirclement. He charged straight towards the river of forgetfulness. Stop him! Yin Wuji's expression changed drastically, and he let out an angry roar. At the same time, the long sword in his hand shot out. Yin Wuji's sword was called the Netherfire Rainbow. It was a holy treasure, and also Yin Wuji's life sword. At this time, the Netherfire Rainbow was activated with all his strength. Like a flowing fire, it cut through the air and caught up to Luo Yunxiao in the sky in the blink of an eye. Chapter 39-31. Puchi. The huge demonic beast's body was cut open. Even its tail was cut in half. Chiwen let out a painful howl. Blood and guts fell from the sky. But Chiwen clenched her teeth. Not only did she not stop, she ignored the loss of the demonic cores in her body and pushed her speed to the maximum. River of Forgetfulness. The river of forgetfulness was right in front of her. Entering the river of forgetfulness, breaking 3 souls, severing 7 spirits, life and death, drinking all the tears of the world. Chi-Wen knew that she would die if she entered the river of forgetfulness. But Luo Yunxiao's dark holy flame originated from the river of forgetfulness. So as long as she could send him into the river of forgetfulness, she would have a chance of survival. Master, you must live on. Mei Yan and the little bastards of the Xiao Yao sect are all waiting for you. It was getting closer, even closer. Just a little bit more and she would be able to send Luo Yunxiao into the river of forgetfulness. But at this moment, annoying sounds of wooden fish and Sanskrit could be heard in the sky. The small, formless karma cauldron became huge and floated above Luo Yunxiao and Chi-Wen's head. Do no evil, do all good. Inanimate, all laws return to one, a deep and old voice accompanied the sounds of the wooden fish and Sanskrit. Chi-Wen raised her head and looked at the huge cauldron emitting golden light. It gradually formed a net and fell down slowly. Helplessness and despair appeared in the bronze bell's eyes. She couldn't escape. She and her master couldn't escape. Why? What did her master do wrong? Why was it that no matter how big the world was, it wasn't even willing to give him a way out? Just as the huge golden net was about to wrap around Chi-Wen and Luo Yunxiao. Suddenly, a ball of black and red flames flew from the sky and wrapped around the golden net. Then, Chi-Wen felt something entangled her and Luo Yunxiao, who was on her back, and flung them away forcefully. She was thrown into the river of forgetfulness. The pain of her body and demonic cores being burned instantly drowned Chi-Wen. The only thing she could do was to hold Luo Yunxiao tightly in her mouth before she lost consciousness. The river of forgetfulness was boiling. Through the murky water, she could vaguely see a figure in white floating above the river of forgetfulness. Chi-Wen couldn't see the person's face clearly. She could only see a blood-red ribbon covering his eyes. The red ribbon intertwined with her long black hair, gently fluttering in the wind. Who are you? How did you enter the Nether Palace? Do you know what you're doing? On the river of forgetfulness, the young man with the red cloth covering his eyes revealed an amused smile. He looked at the turbulent water beneath his feet and laughed heartily. Of course I know. You're asking me why I did it. That's naturally because I'm willing. Floating Island, Bohai Sea. The moment Qi Huang disappears, Mu Yan can no longer hold on and faints in the space. When she woke up again, the overflowing energy in her dantian had already been mostly digested. Meanwhile, her cultivation had also reached the terrifying peak of the heaven-shattering tier. Mother. The moment she opened her eyes, she was hugged by a small figure. The little hands around her trembled slightly. Tears wet her clothes. Mu Yan gently touches the child's head, her voice is gentle. Xiao Bao, why are you crying? Isn't mother fine? Xiao Bao raises his head, revealing his big red eyes. His little face is full of regret and self-blame. Xiao Bao is useless. Xiao Bao shouldn't be in seclusion. Chapter 39-32. Otherwise, he would have been able to help his mother, and he wouldn't have let her suffer such a serious injury. Fool. Mu Yan wipes away the tears on his face, pinches his tender little face and says, Xiao Bao is still a child. What he needs to do the most right now is to cultivate hard and become stronger and stronger. Every time Xiao Bao goes into closed-door cultivation, it means that Xiao Bao's strength has increased by 30%. One day, you will be strong enough to protect mother, right? Moreover, don't you see that mother is fine? Since they'd chosen the path of cultivation, injuries and dangers were unavoidable. Mother was like that, father was like that, and Xiao Bao was also like that. Although Mother is very reluctant to see Xiao Bao get hurt, and she doesn't want Xiao Bao to encounter danger, Mother will absolutely not restrain Xiao Bao and lock him in a warm cage, so that he will never have the ability to spread his wings and soar. Xiao Bao is like this, and Mother is also like this, right? Mu Yan's expression was gentle. As she spoke, she gently smoothed Xiao Bao's hair. There are some things that must be done even though it is clearly dangerous. There are some roads that must be walked even though they are clearly not smooth. There are some experiences that can only be experienced by oneself. Your father is also very worried about Mother, but he has never thought of helping Mother bear everything because he has his responsibilities and Mother also has things that Mother has to do. The same goes for Xiao Bao. One day, you will leave Mother's side. Xiao Bao suddenly grabbed Mu Yan's hand tightly. His wet eyelashes trembled nervously, as if he wanted to say something, but couldn't. He didn't want to leave his mother's side, even if he died. However, could things really go as one wished? Even though Xiao Bao was still so young, he had matured from a young age and had experienced so much. He had already begun to understand. People can't rely on or protect another person forever. Just like when he had to leave his mother's side from the Yanwu continent to the Shuzhen continent. Back then, when he was trapped in the Fuxi secret realm, he had no other choice but to rely on himself. If he wasn't strong enough, he would die in the blood abyss. From then on, he would be separated from his mother by life and death, making her heartbroken. Most of the time, people could only rely on themselves. He was like this, and so was his mother. Xiao Bao rubbed his eyes and nodded lightly. Xiao Bao knows his mistake. In the future, Xiao Bao will believe in Mother, just like Mother believes in Xiao Bao. Mayan felt an indescribable softness in her heart. She smiled and pulled his small body into her embrace, softly saying, "Nyangqin hopes that, even if that's the case, even if we have no choice but to separate in the future, Nyangqin and Xiao Bao can protect yourselves, and then wait for the day when we can meet again." Xiao Bao nodded again, and the stubbornness and guilt in his heart gradually faded away. He had always been trapped in the obsession of protecting his mother and not dragging her down. When he was in the Yanwu continent, these obsessions almost became his inner demons, causing him to fail in his advancement. However, ever since he came to the cultivation continent, Xiao Bao had experienced a lot. His relationship with Di Mingju was getting better and better, and he gradually had the fat rabbit, Bai Xie, Little Phoenix, Wang Huang, the martial uncles of the Xiaoyao school, and Uncle Wei Ran. He was no longer a pitiful child who only had his mother. There was a wider world in front of him, and a greater goal in his heart. He still wanted to become stronger, he wanted to never be separated from his mother. However, he would not allow such thoughts to become shackles that would trap him firmly. Chapter 39-33. And all of this is the result of Mu Yan's patient guidance over the past 2 years, bit by bit. Xiao Bao suddenly buries his little head in Mu Yan's arms, hugging her tightly and rubbing against her. Grandma's muffled voice comes, "Nyangqin. Nyangqin." In the whole world, Xiao Bao likes his mother the most. Mu Yan can't help but laugh, and gently touches his head. Is Xiao Bao acting spoiled to Nyangqin? Huang Huang squeaks and rolls into Mu Yan's arms, letting out giggles. Huang Huang also wants to act spoiled. Huang Huang likes to act spoiled to its mother the most. Xiao Bao disdainfully picks up the little yellow chick and throws it away, hugging Mu Yan tightly. Nyangqin is his. At least at this moment, she's his alone. Not even Huang Huang and his father. Mu Yan looks at the two little guys staring at each other. For the first time, there's a tendency to quarrel. She doesn't know whether to laugh or cry. Just then, Qiuqiu's phoenix clone flies in from outside the space. "Beautiful sister, beautiful sister. Xiaoyao school. Xiaoyao school is here. As soon as Mu Yan comes out of the space, she's surrounded. Little sister, are you all right? You're covered in blood. What happened? Who hurt you? We'll take revenge for you. Mu Yan looks at her fellow apprentices appearing in front of her, and her heart is filled with indescribable warmth. Yun Ruhan and the others all look travel-worn. Most of their spiritual power has been consumed, and even their clothes and hair are covered in dust. They were so worried about her safety that they didn't even have time to adjust their breathing or take care of themselves when they arrived at the shore of the Bohai Sea. She takes out the Tian Mo Chin and gently plucks it, and beautiful music flows from her slender fingertips. I've troubled fellow apprentices to worry about me. The battle is over, and I'm fine now. When everyone sees her playing the Tian Mo Chin, her spiritual power flows smoothly, and the spiritual power lingering around her body is vigorous and mellow. They know that she's really well. Not only is she well, but her strength has also advanced by leaps and bounds. Yun Ruhan hesitantly asks, "Little sister, how high is your cultivation now?" Mu Yan smiles, "The peak of the heaven-breaking realm." Hiss. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Holy shit. I thought my cultivation progress was already fast enough, but compared to 6th senior sister, I'm nothing. Soon after, they saw Xiao Bao by Mu Yan's side, and they felt even more heartbroken. Little treasure, why has even your cultivation reached the heaven-shattering stage? Luo Yu grabbed Xiao Bao and rubbed his soft little face with all her might. Look at you, you're such a monster. Where are we going to put our faces as martial uncles and martial uncles? With great difficulty, Xiao Bao manages to break free and promptly hides behind Mu Yan. He touches his little face that has been rubbed red and swollen. He then said seriously, either you're too weak, or you're too lazy. 7th martial uncle, choose one. Luo Yu. 10,000 arrows piercing her heart. Bastard. Xiao Bao, you are no longer the obedient, cold and adorable little baby from before. Who on earth had led his obedient little martial nephew astray? Mu Yan said with a smile, eldest senior brother, you came at the right time. The energy of the divine fruit in my body hasn't completely dissipated. It's a waste if I can't absorb it. Why don't I help you absorb it now? What's a divine fruit? Little junior sister, did you have some fortuitous encounter these past 2 days? Who left those wounds on your body? Mu Yan briefly recounts what happened in the past few days. Chapter 39-34. Naturally, it was to snatch away the existence of 7 brilliants. She only says that in the end, Di Mingju left behind a talisman that killed Ning Su and saved her life. When the people of the Xiaoyao sect heard that Ning Su had followed them all the way from the main road of cultivation to the floating island, they were dumbfounded. To think that we thought he was a good person in the beginning. I didn't expect that it would stick to 6th senior sister like a dog skin plaster, and wouldn't let go. Fortunately, 6th senior sister is blessed and instructor Mo is invincible. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Mu Yan gently stroked the void spirit ring between her fingers, slightly frowning. Di Mingju still hasn't responded. Even eldest senior brother and the others sensed that he was in danger and rushed over. It's impossible for Di Mingju, who is wearing the same void spirit ring as her, to not sense it. There was only one possibility for him to be unable to rush over despite knowing that he was in danger. That was, he was in great danger. It was so dangerous that he couldn't free himself to save her. Mu Yan takes a deep breath, loosens her grip, and forces herself not to think about it. Di Mingju has chosen to believe in her, so she must also learn to believe in Di Mingju. The man that she, Jun Mayan, likes is wise, far-sighted, powerful, and unparalleled in the world. He wouldn't get into trouble so easily. Even if he encountered danger, he would definitely be able to avert it. Now, she was already at the peak stage of the Shattering Heaven tier, and the cultivation of her fellow disciples had also improved by leaps and bounds during this period of time. Just a little bit more and they would have ascended to the Shushan continent. At that time, she will know what happened to Di Mingju. Thinking of this, she sat down cross-legged and gently plucked the strings of the zither. As the sound of the guqin turned into the Big Dipper skill, it connected the 7 people. Yun Ruhan and the others also slowly sat down and sank into a state of oblivion. Time passed slowly. By the time Mu Yen had transferred all the energy from the divine fruit to the 6 people of the Xiaoyao sect, 3 days had already passed. In these 3 days, Mayan has exhausted herself several times due to the frantic operation of her spiritual power. Then, he used elixirs and echo aura to adjust and absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Like this, the cultivation of the Xiaoyao sect members progressed at a tremendous pace. Yun Ruhan, Qin Zhou, and Lang Yuma had all reached the 5th tier of the heaven-shattering realm. Ling Yuxing and Luo Yu reached the 1st level of the heaven-shattering tier. Only Chu Moli's cultivation was becoming more and more unfathomable. With a rough look, it seemed that he was still at the earth creation realm, but even Mu Yen couldn't tell how strong 3rd senior brother was. As for Mu Yen, she also spent these 3 days stabilizing and absorbing the energy of the divine fruit. Presently, she was only a step away from the mysterious immortal realm. I knew that I would have meat to eat if I followed 6th senior sister. When we return to Liberty City and Uncle Wei and the others see our cultivation, won't their jaws drop? Yes. In less than a year, he had advanced from the hollow immortal mortal stage to the golden immortal peak heaven-shattering stage. No one would be willing to believe such a thing if it was said out loud. What was even more unbelievable was that there wasn't just one such miracle, but 7. Even with all sorts of fortuitous encounters, it was still too shocking and unimaginable. Ling Feather Mo slashed the red lotus soul stealing blade towards the sea. After a loud bang, the surface of the sea surged, rolling up stormy waves. Red flames flickered in the waves. Ling Feather Mo withdrew the red lotus soul stealing blade, her face full of joy. She hooked her arms around Mu Yan's neck and shook her head, sighing, "I've always been humble and low-key, but now I have to admit that I'm a genius. Our Xiaoyao sect is full of geniuses, ha ha ha." Chapter 39-35. Ugh. Luo Yu and Ling Yuxing both gave her a vomiting expression. "You're still humble and low-key. I almost don't know how to write the words humble and low-key anymore. You're courting death." The few of them fooled around for a while, and laughter filled the coast. "It's time for us to return to Liberty City," Mu Yen said warmly. "Now that the 7 of us have reached the heaven-breaking tier, we only need an opportunity to ascend to the Shushan continent." Chu Moli asked, "Where did these 7 people come from?" He was still at the peak of the earth creation realm. Mu Yen curled her lips and ignored him. She continued, "Earlier, I made arrangements for Ruan Yang and the people of Liberty City. I asked them to carry letters for the Netherfire army. If the floating island really collapses one day, they will have something to rely on when they return to the cultivation continent." Falling from the floating island to the cultivation continent was not as simple as changing places. Their cultivation would be greatly reduced by the heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao would not allow a power beyond the tribulation stage to remain on the path of cultivation for long. The increase of the desolate qi would also cause their bodies to begin to deteriorate. Fortunately, Mu Yen had already prepared elixirs that could remove the desolate aura for the people of Liberty City. Coupled with the protection of the Nether Flame Army, the people of Liberty City did not have to worry even if they went to the cultivation continent. According to Little Monkey, this was the benefit of having someone to rely on. The little monkey could be considered a disciple of the Xiaoyao sect. However, his talent was average and his cultivation level had not reached the golden core stage. If he were to be forcefully taken to the Xuxian continent, it would be counterproductive. The little monkey also knew that he wasn't a genius like his martial uncles and little senior brother. He didn't want to leave Ruin Yang's side, so he chose to go to the cultivation continent without hesitation. Although I've told them everything that needs to be told, we'd better go back to Liberty City before we ascend to the continent of immortals. Luo Yu nodded repeatedly. I also want to see Uncle Wei and the others one last time. Yun Ruhan said, since that's the case, why don't we set out now? Everyone agreed. But when Mayan turns around, she finds that the little chick has disappeared. Where did Huang Huang go? The few of them looked around the area, but they couldn't find anyone. Even Little Phoenix's doppelganger could not find a trace of him. Mu Yan couldn't help but feel anxious. Huang Fuzun had once said that she was Huang Huang's master. But in reality, there was no special connection between her and Huang Huang other than the language they shared. Usually, Huang Huang would stay by her side obediently or stay in the space. As long as she wanted to find it, it would come out. Now that Huang Huang had disappeared without a trace, she realized that she had no way of finding him. Just then, coo coo coo. Mummy. Mummy. Come here. Blood, blood. So much blood. A sharp cry accompanied by a yellow furry figure scuttled out of the water. It was Huang Huang. Mayan lets out a long sigh of relief and picks it up. She's just about to properly teach this brat a lesson. The little chick flapped its wings and pointed in the direction of the sea. That expression and the look in his eyes were clearly not a prank. He had really seen something that frightened him. Along with its incoherent screams, Mayan's mind incessantly reverberates with the demonic voice. Oh, Mom, it's blood. Injured. His injuries were so severe. Ugly. Ugly beast. Ah. Mom, save me, there's so much blood. So much blood. Mu Yan is puzzled, so she follows the directions of Huang Huang's little wings and walks towards the sea. Chapter 39-36. The smell of blood seeps into the tip of her nose. The seawater that has rolled up to her feet seems to be dyed a bit red. Mu Yan's heart shudders. She raises her hand, and spiritual power seeps into the water. The next moment, she sees a cluster of waves rising from the sea, rolling something ashore. Its body is split into two halves by a sharp blade from the back. Its face is full of burnt wounds, and its appearance can't be seen clearly. Its body is tightly curled up, and even after being rolled and curled up like this, it still doesn't loosen up. Its body was tightly curled up. Even though it was being rolled and curled up, it did not loosen its grip. The moment they see this spirit beast, the faces of the Xiaoyao sect people change. The moment they saw the spirit beast, the faces of the people of the Xiaoyao sect changed. The moment Mu Yan turns Qi Wen over, her hand uncontrollably trembles. When Mu Yan reaches out to turn Qi Wen over, her hands can't help but tremble. The people of the Xiaoyao sect, who had been the noisiest, were now completely silent. Only the clueless little chick is still tilting its head, making puzzled noises from time to time. However, as soon as Mu Yan's hand touches Qi Wen's body suddenly stiffens. Poisonous spikes emerge from the bloody surface of its body. Mu Yan steadies her mood, softens her voice, and puts her hand on his body. Ordinary poisons can't hurt her. Qi Wen, don't be afraid. She says softly, "Let me see your injuries." Its eyelids, swollen from the seawater, lift up with difficulty. Its pupils are already slack, and it's very strenuous to finally see the figure in front of it. Mei. Yen Yen, it's me. Mu Yen sees that it can still speak, and breathes a sigh of relief. Don't talk, I'll treat you, that's great. Chiwen seems to be unable to hear her. After confirming Mu Yan's identity, its slack pupils reveal a touch of joy. Then, its curled-up body slowly stretches out. Its abdomen, which is dripping with blood and flesh, is desperately protected. There's a person lying there. A person with almost no good flesh on his body. Even with Mu Yan's calmness and indifference, seeing this scene, her heart still beats wildly. There's a buzzing sound in her mind, and she almost loses the ability to think. Young Master. The people of the Xiaoyao sect rush over. Young Master, how could this be? Who hurt youngest martial uncle? Chu Moli's usually gentle face instantly became as gloomy as water. He clenched his fists on the armrest of the wheelchair. But the voice that came out of his mouth was still unusually calm. Let's save them first. Don't get in the way of junior sister. The eyes of Yun Ruhan and the others were already dyed red with anger and regret. However, when he heard Chu Moli's words, he obediently retreated. At a time like this, it was useless to get to the bottom of it. The most important thing now was to save little martial uncle's life. Mayan takes out the Tianmo Qin and plucks the strings with her fingers, but there's no way for her to tune the tune. Junior sister. Chu Moli's voice was low and deep, without the slightest fluctuation. He slowly said, primordial spirit dispersing, muscles and bones breaking, 9 out of 10 chances of survival. If there's anyone in this world who can grasp that slim chance of survival, it's only you, junior sister. Mu Yen closes her eyes. He suppressed the surging killing intent, fear, and pain in his heart bit by bit. Why did she lose her composure? Because as Chu Moli said, others might not be able to see Luo Yunxiao's condition, but as a doctor, she could see it at a glance. Injuries of all sizes on her body, broken meridians and bones inch by inch, and her soul dispersing. Any doctor in this world who saw such a patient would only shake their head and sigh, life and death are decreed by fate, restrain your grief and accept the vicissitudes. Chapter 39-37. This is no longer the flesh and bones of the living dead. It's really about struggling for life from the hands of the King of Hell. Fighting against the heavens. Then let's fight. Even if the King of Hell, even if the Heavenly Tao wants to take little uncle's life from her hands, it still has to ask her whether Mayan agrees or not. Her emotions slowly recover, the peach blossom eyes that are dyed red no longer have a trace of hesitation and fear, only determined pride remains. The sound of the zither slowly reverberates between heaven and earth. The energy of the star field is silently released. The Shin musician skills, Echo, and Art of Yellow, are released. After a round of playing, Chi-Wen's injuries are almost healed. It's just that her vitality was exhausted in the river of forgetfulness, so she's still in a deep sleep at this time. Luo Yu carefully carries the already small Chi-Wen to one side, but there's no sign of relaxation on her face. Because everything has just begun. Mayan takes out a bottle of elixir and swallows it, then uses the echo to replenish her spiritual power. Then she begins to treat Luo Yunxiao. Mayan's Shin musician level can't be mentioned in the same breath as before. Art of Yellow can be used on many people at the same time with ease. The Shin musician skill that could completely heal Chi-Wen falls on Luo Yunxiao, but it can only make his originally battered and miserable appearance look a little better. Mayan doesn't know how little uncle got injured. Who could be so ruthless to the point of piercing his shoulder blade, locking his heart, tearing his soul apart, and even trying to shatter his dantian and the 3 souls and 7 spirits inch by inch. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that Luo Yunxiao is at the end of his rope. It's just that there seems to be a strange energy in his body that's protecting his heart veins, allowing him to persevere to this moment without his soul flying away and dispersing. Mayan thinks of Qi Huang. Qi Huang's sudden change. Little uncle's current miserable condition. And this invisible substance in his body, that energy that even she can't grasp and see through, is it related to Qi Huang? There are only 2 ways to save little uncle now. The first is to completely awaken the hidden energy in little uncle's body, letting it replace his dantian and become the life force that supports little uncle. But intuitively, Mayan doesn't want to use this method. The illusion that she saw from the Tian Mo Qin is still fresh in her memory. 7 Brilliance was a demon that could destroy the world. She did not believe that Qi Huang would harm her. However, it did not mean that she did not understand how terrifying and uncontrollable the energy known as world destruction was. There was only one way left. Mayan closes her eyes, and her fingertips start plucking the Tian Mo Qin once again. Shin musician skill, benevolence of the saint, excessive transfer of the qi of heaven and earth and one's own vitality to a dying person. If he wanted to save little martial uncle, a little bit of anger was not enough. By the end of this rescue mission, her injuries would probably not be light. But so what? Could it be that she had to watch little martial uncle die? Back then, she couldn't save her master, and it was already a lifelong regret. To her, youngest uncle was more of a teacher than her master. He taught her swordsmanship, gave her his natal sword, and saved her from danger time and time again. How could she allow little martial uncle to die? How could she allow the Xiaoyao school to lose another member? As the duration of Saint of Benevolence got longer and longer, Mu Yen feels as if all the strength in her body has been drained. At first, there were still beads of sweat dripping down her forehead, but slowly, her entire body and limbs began to turn cold. Make little martial sister stop. Chu Moli's stern shout awakens the thoughts of everyone in the Xiaoyao school. Chapter 39-38. The faces of Yun Ruhan and the others change greatly, and they rush over to hold Mayan's hand. However, the next moment, he is surprised to find that his hand has passed through Mayan's body. No, it's not passing through Mayan's body. Rather, the space between the two seems to be isolated. Little sister, stop playing. You'll get hurt. Sixth sister, don't scare me, stop. Nyangqin. Nyangqin. The noise seems to be ringing in her ears, but it also seems to be very far away. Mayan's thoughts become misty and chaotic, she forgets who she is and what she is doing here. Her body and soul seem to be one with the Tian Mo Qin, and she only knows to keep playing. However, her strength has been exhausted. Her fingers are so stiff, powerless, and cold. It seems that plucking the strings again is already the limit. But she can't. She can't stop. If she stops, little martial uncle will die. The unfocused peach blossom eyes suddenly condense into a cold light. She can do it. She will definitely snatch little martial uncle back from the hands of the king of hell. She has saved thousands of people in this world, how can she not save her most beloved little martial uncle? She doesn't know where the strength comes from, but her originally powerless fingers. Faintly, she hears a low voice murmuring in her ear. Medicine is the way of medicine, the sage's benevolent heart, the sage's benevolent skill. 3,000 living beings, the red lotus nirvana shows mercy. The red lotus nirvana shows mercy. How to nirvana, how to show mercy. Sacrifice her own life in exchange for little martial uncle's life. No. this is not her way of medicine. She wants to save little Marshall Uncle's life, but she also doesn't want to die. Her Xiao Bao is waiting for her, and her Di Ming Ju is waiting for her. If she dies, there will be many people who will be sad. She's no longer that lonely June Mayan from her previous life. Since she can't sacrifice herself for righteousness, then Nirvana. Shang. A music that can almost break through the clouds resounds, and a powerful energy impact sends Yun Ruhan and the others flying out, directly smashing into the grass on the side. Little sister. Yun Ruhan doesn't even have time to get rid of the grass on her face as she quickly turns to look. Then, they saw an unforgettable scene. The girl in snow-white clothes floated in the air, her whole body exuding a gentle and holy halo. Behind her, there was a huge silver moon shining brightly. 9 stars of different colors revolved around the silver moon. Then it stretches out strands of energy threads and twines them around Mu Yan and Luo Yunxiao. Red flames ignited at the end of the thread. Junior sister, junior Marshall uncle. One look and one could tell that the flame was terrifying. Yun Ruhan was scared out of her wits, and she rushed out to save him. However, before they could make a move, a piece of white paper flew out from Chu Moli's hand. The white paper floated in front of Mu Yan, and dots of ink began to appear on it. Chu Mo Li's steady voice also reached everyone's ears. Wait a little longer, little junior sister has already ushered in a favorable turn of events. His pale and slender hand held a brush, lightly sketching in the air. Following his movements, the ink marks on the floating white paper began to form strange patterns, or perhaps symbols. Chu Moli's complexion also visibly worsened. Only, the corners of his mouth hooked up into a shallow smile. Little sister, you really can give people a pleasant surprise at any time and any place. Mu Yan was awakened by the aroma of food. She still hadn't opened her eyes, but her stomach was already rumbling in protest. Chapter 39-39. Mayan opens her eyes in a daze and sees her 5th brother sitting next to the fire, roasting meat. She doesn't know what kind of spirit beast's meat is. It looks fresh and juicy, and the skin has been roasted until crispy. But Ling Yuxing doesn't know what he's thinking, he's distracted. The meat on one side is done roasting, but he doesn't know how to turn it over. Mayan crawls up and raises her hand, grabs the meat from Ling Yuxing's hand, and takes a big bite. It melts in her mouth, leaving a fragrant taste in her mouth. 5th brother's culinary skills are really not bad. The only thing lacking is that he hasn't put in the seasoning, or he put it carelessly, so it's a bit bland. But Mayan is very hungry at this time, how could she care so much? In 2 or 3 bites, a big piece of meat is almost eaten. However, her stomach has become a bottomless pit. Such a big piece of meat entered her stomach, but she doesn't feel full at all. Instead, her stomach is rumbling with hunger. 5th brother, is there anything else? Roast meat, pastries, soup, as long as it's cooked by you, anything is good. As soon as the words come out, she finds that everyone is looking at her sluggishly, as if they're looking at a monster. Mayan feels a rare trace of embarrassment in her heart. Her table manners were so ferocious that even her fellow apprentices were frightened. She takes out a silk handkerchief and wipes her hands, her movements elegant and her posture leisurely. But the next moment, she takes out a spirit fruit from her space and boldly gnaws on it. Even if there's no delicious food, gnawing on a fruit is also good. She can't afford to be hungry. 6th sister. Luo Yu lets out an earth-shattering cry, and suddenly rushes to hug her. Boo-hoo, 6th sister, you're finally awake. I thought you wouldn't wake up. Mayan almost loses her balance from the hug, and directly falls to the ground. But the spirit fruit in her hand still rolls far away, covered with grass, and can't be eaten anymore. She grimaces in pain, wanting to teach this impetuous Xiao Qi a lesson. But when she looks up, she finds that everyone in the Xiao Yao school has a very strange expression. Even Yun Ruhan, who had always been steady, had tears in his eyes, but his expression was wild with joy. Mayan belatedly responds, "Slept for a long time." "It's more than a long time." Ling Yuma said with lingering fear, "Junior sister, you've already slept for 7 days and 7 nights. During that period of time, his heartbeat and breathing completely stopped, and the spiritual power in his body also overflowed. Xiao Bao was almost scared to death. Little treasure. Mayan's complexion greatly changes. Where's Xiao Bao? Don't worry, Yun Ruhan said gently. Third brother used a spell to make Xiao Bao sleep for 7 days. Otherwise, he's too young, and if his emotions fluctuate too much, I'm afraid he won't be able to handle it. Mu Yan breathed a sigh of relief. Where's Xiao Bao? I want to see him. Ling Yuxing smiled and said, I'll go carry the little guy out. Junior sister, don't move. Why don't you continue to absorb the essence of the sun and moon here? Mu Yan stares blankly, only then does she realize that this is still the seaside of the Bohai Sea. The only difference was that there was a courtyard not far from the beach. Inside, there were pavilions, terraces, and pavilions, with trees providing shade. It was very comfortable and elegant. However, Mu Yan recognized at a glance that it was transformed from a Sumra mustard seed magic treasure. But Xiao Bao is lying in a mustard seed magic treasure. Why is she lying on the beach, exposed to the wind and the sun? Third brother said that you need to absorb the essence of the sun and moon to restore your body's vitality. Otherwise, even if you can survive, your realm will fall a lot. Absorb the essence of the sun and moon. Mu Yan's mouth twitches. Chapter 39-40. Third brother, that pervert, wouldn't be deliberately messing with her. After all, it's not the first time she's offended him, and her third brother is gentle and weak on the surface, but he's actually a black-bellied viper, narrow-minded and vengeful. But after using her divine sense to investigate the condition of her body, Mu Yan is suddenly stunned. In order to save youngest martial uncle, she had unreservedly used the Saint of Benevolence. It's reasonable to say that even if she could survive, she would certainly lose a lot of her lifespan. Lifespan is something closely related to a person's cultivation, root bone, and soul source. Once her lifespan is consumed too much, it's natural for her realm to fall. But now, not only has her lifespan not been consumed. Among the Shin musician skills, there's even one more, Nirvana of the Stars. What is this? There's clearly no such skill in the Shin musician inheritance that she received. Moreover, Mu Yan tries to touch it with her divine sense, but there's no response. Mu Yan frowns, temporarily throwing it to the back of her mind. How are youngest martial uncle and Qi Wen? Luoyu is about to answer. Suddenly, the faces of several people change. Because not far away from them, the sea has begun to roll up turbulent waves. Then, space twists and overlaps. Dozens of figures fall from the sky, landing on the surface of the sea. Almost the moment she sees these people, Mu Yan's pupils suddenly shrink. The joy that the Saint of Benevolence didn't bring about any after-effects disappears in an instant. Shi Baiyong, are you sure that His Highness came to this shitty floating island? TSK, without a teleportation treasure, he's so badly injured, and he even fell into the river of forgetfulness. If he really passed through the barrier of space, I'm afraid he would have died long ago, right? Idiot, is this the first time you know who His Highness is? If he would die so easily, how could the domain master? As soon as the few people who appeared out of thin air land on the sea, most of them begin to close their eyes and adjust their breathing. Only the two old men who lead them talk as if there's no one else around. Yong, clean your mouth, who are you calling an idiot? The one called Yong looks to be around 50 years old, slightly plump and kind-looking. The person beside him was tall and thin. He also looked to be in his 50s, but his facial features were much more sinister and ruthless. Yong said coldly, "Stop fooling around. Our top priority right now is to find the First Highness and complete the mission given by the Domain Lord. Otherwise, I'm afraid we won't have a good time in the future." Humph. The floating island isn't big, but it's not small either. The Region Lord only gave us a month's time. Isn't it like looking for a needle in a haystack? Yong shook his head and looked at his companion as if he was looking at an idiot. Don't you know that the restriction placed on the First Prince by the Territorial Lord can not only restrict the First Prince's cultivation and strength, but it can also help us locate the First Prince? As he spoke, he looked around. Since we've appeared on the floating island, Her Highness must be nearby. It just so happens that there are a few little guys over there. Let's go ask them. After saying that, without waiting for the people around him to react, his figure swayed and disappeared on the spot. As soon as the two of them landed on the beach, Mu Yan and the others immediately stood up, ready for battle. Yong hurriedly said, "Little friends, don't panic. We don't have any bad intentions. We're just here to ask you about a piece of information. In the past few days, have you seen an injured magical beast in the vicinity? There might also be a similarly injured person next to the magical beast." Chapter 39-41. Mu Yan said lightly, "Never seen them." "Little girl, you didn't even think about it before blurting it out. Are you trying to trick us?" The lanky man who came ashore with Yong opened his eyes wide and looked fiercely at these kids. His eyes widened, and he couldn't help but exchange a glance with Yong. Judging from their bone structure, these little fellows were no more than 20 years old. But their cultivation had reached the peak of golden immortal. Even in the Shushin continent, there weren't many such geniuses. They had encountered one on a mere floating island. And there were 4 of them at once. Yun Ruhan stepped forward and bowed, "May I know the identity of the seniors?" Yong stroked his beard and said lightly, "You don't need to know who we are. Just answer our questions." Yun Ruhan smiled. "We're disciples of Floating Island's Carefree School. We've been here for 7 days now, and we've been chased by our enemies. That's why we're a bit wary of you too. But we really haven't seen the magical beasts you mentioned." Yong couldn't help but frown. The lanky man next to him couldn't help but laugh. "Yong, didn't you say that the Domain Master would never find the wrong place with the restriction? You heard it just now, His Highness isn't nearby at all. I think it's because you're not proficient in the transposition spell, so you made a mistake." "Guan Santong, shut up!" Yong shouted angrily, his face unsightly. At this time, the people who were resting on the sea's surface had recovered from the discomfort of passing through the spatial barrier, and they all flew over. Yong ordered, "Search the area within a radius of several kilometers, especially the forest ahead." "Yes." The people behind him scattered. Yong smiled and looked at the courtyard not far away. "We've come a long way and are a little thirsty. I wonder if you can invite us in to sit." Yun Ruhan's heart skipped a beat, but her face was calm, of course. "Please, seniors. I only hope you won't mind our crude mustard seed magic weapons." Yong saw that these people were so calm even when facing him and Guan Santong, and he couldn't help but have a higher opinion of them. Such outstanding young talents, if he could wait for them to ascend and recruit them to the Nether Realm, it would not be bad. Guan Santong, who was a step behind Yong, couldn't help but glance at Mu Yen, his eyes revealing a look of astonishment and greed. The group soon arrived at the courtyard. Mother! As soon as they entered, Xiao Bao threw himself into Mu Yan's embrace. His little hands hugged her tightly, and his little body couldn't stop trembling. Mu Yan's heart aches terribly, and she can't stop feeling guilty. No matter how reasonable she was, it was a fact that she had caused Xiao Bao to be on tenterhooks so many times in the past few days. He thought of Xiao Bao's anxiety, fear, and sadness when he saw that he wasn't breathing and had a heartbeat. Mu Yan couldn't help but want to ruthlessly slap herself. But at this moment, she couldn't show it. She took a deep breath and held back the tears in her eyes. Then, she picked him up and kissed his little face. She smiled and said, "Mother only went out for a while and you're already crying. Xiao Bao is already 6 years old. He's a man, how can he cry so easily?" Xiao Bao's little hand squeezed Mu Yan's fingers tightly, as if he was afraid that she would run away. Chapter 39-42. Xiao Bao, don't leave mommy's side. Don't. The delicate baby wouldn't stop crying, and it wasn't annoying at all. Instead, it was enough to melt a person's heart. Mu Yan said gently, "I'm sorry. My son is naughty and mischievous. Please don't laugh at me." Guan Santong licked his lips and looked at Mu Yan, then at the cute Xiao Bao in her arms. The greedy light in his eyes grew brighter. He chuckled, stepped forward, and reached out to touch Xiao Bao's face. "You're so cute. Let me hug you, and I'll give you something nice. How about that?" Mayan calmly takes a step back, avoiding Guan Santong's touch. A bone-piercing chill flashes through her eyes. "Ha, little girl, if you won't let me hug your son, why don't you let me hug him? Treat me well and you'll be rewarded in the future." This time, it was Xiao Bao's turn to be cold, and he almost couldn't control his childish demeanor anymore. He rubbed the warding evil sword that had shrunk to the size of a palm at his waist. He heard Bai Xie's exasperated voice. "Damn it! You old pervert! You're a sucker for both men and women, young and old. Why is everyone in the netherworld like this? Young master, let me chop him into 8 or 10 pieces later." Not only did he covet Boss Jun, he even coveted his young master. He must be tired of living. Xiao Bao tightened his grip on the warding evil sword and didn't say anything. Guan Santong saw that Mu Yan was looking at him indifferently, and there was even a hint of coldness in her eyes. He was displeased and his face darkened. "You're just a few golden immortals from the mortal world. I advise you to behave yourself. It's your honor that I like you." Guan Santong. He was about to step forward, when Shi Baiyong came out of the room and snapped at him. "Don't forget what we're here for. Think about what will happen to you if you ruin the master's plan." Guan Santong snorted coldly, but still retreated. It's just that his pair of sinister eyes can't help but glance at Mu Yan and Xiao Bao. Behind Shi Baiyong were Chu Moli and Ling Yusheng, who were sitting in a wheelchair. Obviously, Shi Baiyong did not find Qi Wen and little Martial Uncle. How could Yun Ruhan be so at ease to bring people into this spatial treasure? It was precisely because Chu Moli was here. He knew that as long as Old Third noticed that something was amiss, he would react accordingly and make preparations. At this moment, Chu Moli's complexion was even paler. It seemed as if he couldn't walk properly. He looked weak and harmless. Even Shi Baiyong noticed Ling Yusheng's talent. He sighed with emotion at how a small sect on the floating island could produce so many geniuses, yet he didn't notice Chu Moli's uniqueness. Chu Moli coughed lightly a few times. Only then did he reveal a weak smile. I've embarrassed myself in front of the two seniors. My junior and junior brothers came to this northern territory in order to find a good cure for my illness. I wonder if the two seniors have a specific appearance of the person and magical beast you are looking for. If there is a portrait, it might be more convenient for us to help you find them. Shi Baiyong shook his head. That won't be necessary. Although finding Luo Yunxiao didn't have to be done in secret, it couldn't be done with too much fanfare either. It was even more impossible for him to leave behind a portrait. Since that's the case, we'll take our leave first. Thank you for your hospitality, little friends. If you encounter any difficulties in ascending to the Shushan continent in the future, you can come to the Netherworld to look for this old man. Chapter 39-43. With that, Shi Baiyong threw a jade slip to Yun Ruhan. The cultivation levels of these little guys were about the same. But judging from their appearance and behavior, Yun Ruhan should be the leader among them. And the ice soul sword at his waist made Shi Baiyong even more certain of this fact. Although it was only a heavenly god artifact, even the scabbard could not withstand its cold qi. Even in the Shushan continent, it was a rare magic treasure, let alone on this floating island. To have such a treasure, Yun Ruhan was obviously the strongest among the seven. Shi Baiyong and Guan Santong walked out of the courtyard, but did not go far. They waited for the results of the search. This time, the two of them brought more than 10 Xian immortals with them. Half of them were good at stealth and tracking. As long as Luo Yunxiao was nearby, they did not believe that they could not find her. However, these 20 Xian immortals searched from dawn to dusk. In the end, they found nothing. This is impossible. Shi Baiyong's face was full of disbelief. My transfiguration technique can't be wrong. Could it be that the first prince has escaped? But he is clearly so seriously injured, where can he escape to? Moreover, he was very familiar with the aura of this man and beast when they used their divine powers. If the two of them used their divine powers or devil qi to escape, he would definitely be able to sense it. Guan Santong, what do you think? Shi Baiyong was stunned. He did not see his companions. Then, he thought of something and furrowed his brows. This useless trash who can't do anything right. How can he only think of women at this time? He glanced at the courtyard behind him and finally shook his head in disgust. Guan Santong's cultivation level was the same as his, first-level immortal king. Perhaps in terms of divine powers, he was slightly better. But if the two of them wanted to determine a winner, both of them would definitely be injured. Shi Baiyong did not want to fight to the death with Guan Santong for a few little guys he did not know. It was just a pity that the cold dish mayu would be wasted. If you want to blame something, blame your bad luck. Of all the places to appear, you had to appear here. The small courtyard was quiet, as if the people inside had fallen into a deep sleep. Only the two lanterns at the door swayed gently. They cast mottled shadows on the ground. Guan Santong's heart was burning. He pressed his hand on the closed door and gently pushed. The door was sturdy and did not budge at all. Guan Santong only curled his lips in disdain. The immortal energy in his body surged. With a bang, the lock fell off and the wooden door creaked open slowly. The sound was ear-piercing and loud in the silent darkness. However, Guan Santong did not take it to heart. It wasn't as if he snuck in. It would be fine if the little girl was obedient. If they refused to listen, then he didn't mind killing them. He wanted to let these fledgling brats know what it meant to be helpless and helpless. However, the door was pushed hard by Guan Santong again, making a loud bang. It was still quiet inside. Guan Santong chuckled as he entered the room. The room was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. With Guan Santong's cultivation, how could he not sense that there was someone in the room? He strode forward and approached the figure hidden in the darkness. He reached out his hand to grab her. "Little girl, since you're obedient to me today, I'll treat you well." Ah! Suddenly, there was a burning pain in his abdomen, causing Guan Santong to scream in pain. With a sudden wave of his hand, a powerful wave of immortal energy surged out. With a loud bang, the wall was broken by him. Chapter 39-44. The light from the next door shines through, illuminating Guan Santong's shocked and angry face. Guan Santong looks down and sees that a huge bloody hole has been burned in his abdomen. The flesh around the bloody hole is still making a sizzling sound. And the golden armor that he's wearing has also been burned with a big hole. The ashes of the armor even stick to the wound, and as the flesh squirms, it keeps drilling into the wound, making him want to die. Guan Santong suddenly raises his head and looks ahead. He sees that the beautiful girl who has captivated his dreams this afternoon is looking at him with a smile that isn't a smile, without a trace of warmth in her eyes. "Slut, what did you do to me?" Guan Santong quickly takes out an elixir and swallows it. His eyes are filled with resentment as he looks at the woman in front of him. He didn't expect that he would be pecked in the eye by a goose. How could a little golden immortal have the ability to burn through his armor and even hurt him? Mayan raises her hand, and a golden red fireball appears in her palm, gently pulsating. The huge eye in the center of the fireball is staring at Guan Santong maliciously, revealing a greedy and longing light. Guan Santong cultivates a fire attribute cultivation method. His cultivation level, physique, and immortal power were the best supplements for the Golden Crows. The corner of Guan Santong's eye fiercely jumps, Golden Crow Fire Essence. You actually have the Golden Crow Fire Essence. After the shock, his heart is filled with ecstasy. For the Golden Crow, the whole body of a fire attribute cultivation method cultivator is a treasure. For a fire attribute spirit cultivator, the Golden Crow is also a rare treasure in the world. If it can be cultivated into Dan fire and absorbed into the body, whether it is cultivation or magical power, it will immediately increase by several times. At this time, Guan Santong doesn't even care about the burning pain on his body. He steps in front of Mayan and reaches out to grab her palm. "Is the Golden Crow something that a little girl who is still wet behind her ears like you can use? Give me the Golden Crow, and I'll spare your life today." Mayan stands in the same place with a smile, not dodging or evading, her demeanor leisurely. In the quiet darkness, there is a faint melodious sound of a zither in his ears. Guan Santong knows that it's a trap, but he doesn't care at all. He was an immortal king, 2 whole realms higher than a golden immortal. In the face of absolute power, all schemes and plots were nothing more than insignificant tricks. How could he possibly be interested in them? Just as Guan Santong's hand is about to latch onto Mayan's neck and take the Golden Crow away, his body suddenly froze, and the expression on his face froze. The 4th layer of absolute space domain, time and space stop. It was only for a moment, but it was enough. The originally melodious sound of the zither suddenly became impassioned. Yun Ruhan, Qin Zhou, Leng Yuma, and Luo Yu who were hidden in the darkness all appeared. Countless attacks landed mercilessly on Guan Santong. Boom! With a loud explosion, the entire interstitial space was almost blown up. Guan Santong was directly smashed face first into the ground by Qin Zhou's fist. His reaction was extremely fast. The time stopped was very short, only about 1 breath. By the time he realized that something was wrong, the immortal energy in his body was already circulating rapidly. Therefore, although he was in a sorry state, his injuries were not serious. But the anger in his heart had already reached the peak of an eruption. Insignificant little bastards from the floating island, how dare they humiliate him like this? Guan Santong bellowed, and a pair of heavenly fire dragon hammers appeared in his hands. Immortal energy poured into the hammers, and they fiercely hit each other. Chapter 39:45. With a loud bang, the entire house began to collapse. Cracks appeared on the ground. At the same time, a ball of flame bursts out from the lightning caused by the collision of the two hammers. It turns into a huge beast face and rushes straight towards Mayan. Guan Santong's face revealed a ferocious expression. He wanted to let these little brats that didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth know what the immortal king realm was. It was indeed a pity that such a beautiful woman was disfigured. But he just had to find more beauties. And Guan Santong's dignity could not be disrespected. However, just as the beast's face is about to engulf Mayan, mud wall rose from the ground, blocking the path of the flame beast. There was a tall and burly figure in front of the mud wall. It was an ordinary-looking man who also held a pair of hammers in his hands. He raised his hands high and swung them down. A ferocious wave collided with the flame beast. Guan Santong's face revealed a mocking expression. The pair of hammers were also good items. They were at least at the heavenly divine artifact level. But so what? Could a mere golden immortal really control a heavenly divine weapon? Just as Guan Santong expected, the energy of both sides collided. Without any suspense, the flaming beast broke through the airwaves and directly opened its bloody mouth, swallowing the young man's figure into its stomach. Guan Santong had just smiled when his eyes suddenly widened. Fourth-tier power domain, Vajra body. How is this possible? Guan Santong was so conceited that he didn't take these kids seriously at all. When he attacked Mu Yen just now, time and space suddenly stopped. He didn't even notice it. As a result, he didn't know that Ling Yuxing had already displayed the absolute space field, time and space freeze. Otherwise, he wouldn't just be shocked right now, he would be aghast and on guard. He no longer dared to underestimate these golden immortals. However, there were no ifs in this world. It was precisely because of this contempt, and the shock brought about by the Vajra invincible body, that Qin Zhou displayed. Guan Santong had missed his best opportunity. He didn't even notice that a few pieces of paper had been placed around where he was standing. The drawings on the paper were messy and broken. When the wind blew in from outside, the drawings would curl up gently. But it was never blown away from its original position. As time passed, the papers began to spontaneously combust. The burning flames were neither red nor orange, but a black that almost blended into the night. When all the shredded paper had been burned, the black flames had intertwined, forming a circle that surrounded Guan Santong. At this time, Guan Santong was still unaware. After the shock of Qin Zhou, he immediately calmed down. It was truly shocking for a golden immortal to reach the 4th level of the domain and be able to activate the invincible Vajra body at the 4th level of the domain. But that was all. In the face of absolute power, no matter how good one's talent was, it was just talent. It was potential, and it could not be turned into life-saving strength. Didn't you see that the blockhead was already on the verge of collapse after blocking the flame beast once? His face was deathly pale. He could block it once, but could he block it a second and a third time? Guan Santong hid the horror on his face and sneered. He raised his heavenly fire dragon hammers again. At this moment, he felt that something was amiss. His body could not move. The immortal energy in his body seemed to be restrained by something. He didn't know when, but the music in his ears had become more and more urgent. On the collapsed roof, 7 glittering and translucent swords hung high, forming a sword net, emitting a cold light. Chapter 39:46. Awe. Shrill screams pierced through the sky. And this familiar sound made Shirbayong, who was frowning and waiting by the beach, change his expression. Because this was clearly Guan Santong's voice. Although he disdained Guan Santong's behavior, as an elder of the Nether Realm, he recognized Guan Santong's strength. Guan Santong wanted to make a move on the little girl, and he had already determined that the little girl would not be able to escape Guan Santong's evil clutches. And the little girl's fellow disciples, as long as they had the slightest bit of backbone, would definitely resist. The final outcome would most likely be the slaughter of their entire clan. Shirbayong sighed and felt disgusted, but he agreed with this approach. If the roots were not removed when weeds were cut, they would grow again when the spring wind blows. Since he had already made his move, he naturally had to kill them all to avoid future troubles. So when he heard the sounds coming from the courtyard, he did not pay any attention to it. But Shirbayong did not expect that. The first scream was not from the little guys, but from Guan Santong. Shirbayong could no longer sit still. He quickly rose into the air and flew toward the small courtyard. His subordinates followed behind him. But when he was about to reach the top of the small courtyard, Shirbayong's movement suddenly stopped, and his pupils suddenly shrank. He saw a figure covered in blood floating above the small courtyard. Who else could it be but Guan Santong? At this moment, his hands, feet, and head seemed to be bound by something, and then pulled fiercely on both sides. With the pull, the skin on his neck, shoulders, chest, and thighs were torn apart inch by inch. The immortal bones that had long been forged were also making bursts of cracking sounds, as if they would break at any time. This was simply like the torture of a mortal being torn apart by 5 horses. But what kind of power could tear an immortal king's body apart by 5 horses? Shirbayong's eyelids kept twitching, and his gaze turned to Guan Santong's surroundings. 6 figures, facing them from a distance. The night wind fluttered their clothes, revealing ordinary, or handsome, or peerlessly beautiful faces. They were all youths in their early 20s. At most, they were only at the peak of the golden immortal level. But at this moment, these 6 people surrounded Guan Santong, who was screaming miserably. They looked at him calmly, neither servile nor overbearing, but it made Shirbayong feel a chill from the bottom of his heart. No. Not just 6 people. Shirbayong suddenly sensed something in his heart, and he quickly looked down. In the collapsed courtyard below, the thin and elegant young man was still sitting quietly in his wheelchair. His complexion was paler than the others, and his figure was so thin that it seemed like he would be blown away by a gust of wind. But he could see it with his eyes. There was a black energy line that seemed to have merged with the darkness of the night. It flew out from his fingertip and turned into a force that made Guan Santong feel so much pain that he wanted to die. This energy fluctuation seemed very familiar, but also very strange. But no matter what, how did a golden immortal trap an immortal king? Who were these 7 people? What are you doing? Release our elder Guan. Some of the Xian immortals behind Shirbayong were Guan Santong's direct subordinates. When they saw this scene, their expressions changed drastically. They cursed and rushed over to help. However, just as they rushed to Guan Santong's side, their limbs became extremely heavy. The immortal energy in his body seemed to have been sealed by something, and he was unable to use it. Not long after, their limbs and heads were also pulled apart, and they let out miserable screams. Below, Chu Moli was still sitting quietly in his wheelchair, the corners of his mouth hooked into a gentle smile. Chapter 39:47. Chu Moli was still sitting quietly in his wheelchair with a gentle smile on his face. But no one noticed that his hand on the wheelchair's armrest had suddenly tightened. A fishy sweetness surged up his throat, but he forcefully swallowed it back down. Almost at the same time, the melodious sound of a zither rang out in the dark night. It was like flowing water, combing through Chu Moli's soul and body. The smile on his face deepened as he looked at the trapped Guan Santong and the others with a smile that wasn't a smile. Shi Baiyong's expression was one of extreme fear. He stared fixedly at the frail young man below him while his emotions surged and roiled. He ceaselessly guessed who this person was and what sort of methods he used. He didn't even notice the sound of the zither lingering in the night. "All of you, calm down." Shi Baiyong stopped his subordinates from rushing forward and looked at them with a complicated gaze. He said slowly, "My friends, what is the meaning of this?" Yun Ruhan said coldly, "Shouldn't we be asking you that? This old thing broke into our courtyard in the middle of the night and wanted to attack my junior sister. What is he trying to do?" Shi Baiyong glared at Guan Santong and said in a gentle voice, "I'm afraid there's some misunderstanding here. Why don't you give me some face and let my friend go first? I'll definitely compensate you tenfold for your losses." Guan Santong was in so much pain that he almost fainted. The sound of bones cracking was like thunder in his ears, making it so that he couldn't hear anything else. But now that he had recovered, he finally realized that Shi Baiyong had come. He had never been on good terms with Shi Baiyong. But the two of them were on a mission together, so Shi Baiyong couldn't ignore him no matter what. Delighted, Guan Santong immediately yelled, "Let me go. I promise I won't attack that girl again. Whatever compensation you want, I can give it to you. Let me go, let me go. I can't take it anymore, ah." Shi Baiyong looked at Yun Ruhan with a sincere expression, "My friend, why don't you give me some face and let this matter go?" Yun Ruhan's face darkened and she didn't say anything. However, Shi Baiyong knew that his heart was beginning to waver. He smiled lightly and said, "Little friend, you should be very clear that you were able to trap my friend because of luck. I won't hide it from you. We come from the netherworld region of the Shushan continent. If you have the ambition to ascend, you should understand what will happen to you if you offend the netherworld region in the Shushan continent. On the contrary, if we were to form good karma this time, it would definitely be beneficial to the few of you." Yun Ruhan pondered for a moment, then said indifferently, "Since he offended our junior sister, then we'll let her decide." Shi Baiyong looks at Mayan. At this moment, the moonlight shone on the young girl. Her eyes were bright, her teeth were white, and her skin was as white as snow. Her long eyelashes were sprinkled with silver radiance. As they trembled slightly, her peach blossom eyes glowed with a brilliant luster. She was so beautiful that one's heart skipped a beat. Shi Baiyong thought to himself, no wonder Guan Santong was so infatuated with her. But this kind of little girl was also the easiest to control. With just a few words, he would be able to make her listen obediently. Shi Baiyong smiled faintly and said, "May I know the little girl's name? This old man feels like an old friend at first sight, so I want to take you as my adopted daughter. Once you become my adopted daughter, you can rest assured that no one will dare to bully you again. What do you think?" Chapter 39-48. Mayan's long eyelashes fluttered. She took a step forward and arrived in front of Guan Santong. The transparent sword in her hand gently moved, and the black threads, or black flames, that were originally entangled in the surroundings automatically moved away. Shi Baiyong and Guan Santong were delighted. It seemed that the little girl was really afraid. Such a delicate and timid little girl could reach this level of cultivation by relying on the protection of her fellow apprentices. She was almost bullied by Guan Santong, so she must be afraid and resentful. But such a little girl was soft-hearted and inexperienced. What she was most afraid of was bringing trouble to her sect. How could she be willing to put her fellow apprentices in danger for her own sake? The 7 absolute swords in her slender, jade-like hand emitted a dazzling light. The next moment, Shi Baiyong heard a soft, sweet whisper. Indiscriminate destruction. Boom! The dazzling white light soared into the sky, accompanied by Guan Santong's incredulous scream. No, impossible. My immortal bone, how could my immortal bone? I can't be killed. Ah, Shi Baiyong, save me, save me. I don't want to die, I don't want. The white light dissipated, and the 7 absolute swords dimmed, slightly drooping. The girl holding the 7 absolute swords was pale, but the corners of her mouth were slightly raised. A pair of peach blossom eyes reflected the bright moon and stars, appearing so clear and cold. She stared straight at Shi Baiyong, her voice careless and slightly hoarse. What did you just say? You want to adopt me as your daughter? Shi Baiyong's lips trembled. He wanted to say something, but he felt something blocking his throat. He couldn't utter a single syllable. She killed Guan Santong. A little golden immortal girl from the floating island, unexpectedly, so easily killed Guan Santong, who had immortal bone. How was this possible? That was an immortal king. In the immortal king realm, no matter how much damage the body suffered, they could be reborn. As long as their primordial spirit was not destroyed, they would not die easily. Even in the Shushan continent, immortal king-level powerhouses are very rare. But at this moment, he actually watched helplessly as a celestial king was killed. Even in the Great War with the Polar Domain, when facing the Polar Domain's sovereign emperor, Shi Baiyong had never lost his composure like this, never felt so shocked. You, who the hell are you? Mu Yan did not pay attention to him, but slowly retreated. The moment she retreated, Leng Yuma and the rest quickly moved forward. Boom boom boom. Ice Frost Sword, Raging Flame Blade, Divine Beast by Fang, Cloud Silk Broken Bone, 10,000 Catty Heavy Hammer, overwhelming attacks fell on those Xian immortals who were also trapped. No! Shi Baiyong let out a scream and was about to rush forward. However, he was still a step too late. Every single one of these fellows appeared to be gentle and quiet. When Zhang Xian first met them, he felt that there was nothing special about them other than their high cultivation bases and talent. He felt that they were safe and harmless. But when the attack landed, Shi Baiyong realized how wrong he was. Was that strange and mysterious sickly young man the only scary one? Was the beautiful sword-wielding girl the only scary one? No. Every single one of them was ridiculously strong, so strong that they surpassed the realm of gold immortals. Moreover, each one was more cruel and merciless than the other. Were they really not afraid of the forces of the nether realm at all? Did they really not put an immortal king in their eyes at all? Chapter 39-49. The fire and the dust dissipated. The corpses of Guan Santong and several Xian immortals fell straight to the ground, making a series of banging sounds. The subordinates behind Shi Baiyong were so frightened by this scene that they lost their ability to speak. Someone couldn't help but repeat Shi Baiyong's question with a trembling voice. You, who are you? Mu Yan and the others landed on the ground. They looked calm and relaxed on the surface, but their faces were a little pale. But in fact, they were all seriously injured. Even if they caught them off guard and set up a lot of traps, the 7 people still paid a big price. After all, they were immortal kings and Xian immortals. They weren't cats and dogs that they could casually beat on the floating island. And if it weren't for Chu Moli, even if they risked their lives, they wouldn't necessarily be able to kill an immortal king. But Chu Moli's cultivation method was special, and every time he used it, he had to pay a heavy price. If it weren't for Mu Yen using the Shin musician's skill to heal him, he probably would have fallen down by now. And now, they had to face another immortal king and more than a dozen Xian immortals. They paid such a big price, but only killed one immortal king and several Xian immortals. And let themselves fall into such a desperate situation. Was it worth it? Of course it was worth it. Mu Yan looked at Shi Baiyong and the others, and said slowly, "Didn't I say it before? We are from the Xiaoyao school." Xiaoyao school. Shi Baiyong frowned tightly. He knew about the Lan family of the floating island and the Ning family, but he had never heard of the Xiaoyao school before. Could it be that the intelligence of the Nether Realm was lagging behind? Just as he was puzzled, he heard Mu Yen continue, "I should let you know the purpose of my Xiaoyao school." After a pause, she said word by word, "If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I'll cut the weeds, and remove the roots." What a big tone. Shi Baiyong almost laughed when he heard this, "Cut the weeds and remove the roots. Do you want to get rid of me too?" Ha! A few inexperienced little guys who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth, aren't you afraid that the wind will cut your tongue? He said with a cold face, "I admit that Guan Santong's behavior was inappropriate, but I also apologized to you in a kind voice and proposed a way to compensate you. You're so arrogant, daring to kill an elder of my nether domain. Have you not thought of the consequences?" Mu Yen says indifferently, "I've thought about it, but I still have to kill." As soon as she finished speaking, a golden red fireball rose from her left shoulder, emitting scorching heat. Golden Crow Fire Essence. Shi Baiyong's expression changed again. How much more shock did these little fellows want to give him? However, he did not know that this was just the beginning. Yun Ruhan took a step forward and said coldly, "As long as someone harms someone from the Carefree sect, we will seek justice. Even if my body and soul perish, I won't hesitate." The ice soul sword pierced into the ground, and a cracking sound came from the tip of the sword. The sandy ground began to turn into a layer of ice, and it quickly spread in all directions. There are 5 elements in heaven and earth: water, fire, metal, wood, and earth. Through time and space, 10,000 things are formed. The fusion of divine energy, all natural laws, is the clouds and rain, is the mountains and seas. Sea of Mountains Domain, 4th layer. Ling Yuma slowly raised the red lotus multi-soul saber. The patterns on the saber began to burn bit by bit. The golden red light was dazzling, like boiling lava. Inextinguishable flame spell. Shi Baiyong's eyes widened, and his heart was like a raging storm. These people killed Guan Santong, the immortal king, and they still didn't have all their cards. How much potential did they have? What other tricks did they have? Chapter 3950. Roar. An earth-shattering roar resounded, causing the entire floating island to tremble. Shi Baiyong raised his head in horror and met a pair of calm, indifferent and superior beast eyes. Divine beast bays. Shi Baiyong's sea of consciousness could not help but tremble as he looked at Luo Yu in shock. This was not Bai Zai's shadow, but the real divine beast Bai Zai. Could this little fellow be the descendant of the beast god Lan Xiaozi who founded the floating island? But even the people of the Lan family empire had never heard of anyone being able to summon Bai Zai's physical body. Damn it! Who were these little guys? Why were they all more abnormal than the other? Shi Baiyong's breathing quickened. While he was shocked, a thick killing intent surged from the bottom of his heart. There was no way to resolve this matter peacefully today. Then these 7 people must be killed. Especially the young man in the wheelchair. Even Guan Santong had no way of fighting back against such a strange technique. What were his chances of winning if he were to encounter him? Fortunately, the youth looked like an arrow at the end of its flight. At the very least, he would not be able to use such a strange method a second time in a short period of time. Shi Baiyong waved his hand, and the 2 subordinates behind him immediately understood. His body turned into a streak of sword light and charged towards Chu Moli without the slightest hesitation. And Shi Baiyong doesn't give Mu Yen and the others the slightest chance to return. Long swords appear in their hands. With a command, they immediately attack Mu Yen and the others. In an instant, the 2 sides were locked in battle. As soon as they exchanged blows, Shi Baiyong felt more at ease. Because he realized that although these little fellows had made a fierce noise, they were still not strong enough. In reality, he didn't even have the ability to fight against a true Xian immortal, let alone an immortal king. Come to think of it, that makes sense. The difference between a golden immortal and a mystic immortal was an entire realm. On the floating island, there was a world of difference between mysterious life tier and shattering heaven tier golden immortals. From this, one could imagine the difference between a golden immortal and a mysterious immortal. Not to mention the immortal kings who could do whatever they wanted in the Shushan continent. In less than 10 minutes, the members of the Xiaoyao sect were covered with wounds of various sizes. Even if he didn't look at his spiritual power consumption and injuries. However, if the blood that flowed out of these wounds was not treated as soon as possible, they would not be able to hold on and die of blood loss. However, Shi Baiyong's side had more people and was stronger than them. Under the siege, how could they have the time to take medicinal pills and flirt? It was only a matter of time before Yun Ruhan and the others collapsed. Shi Baiyong gradually relaxed and casually waved away Yun Ruhan's sword. He still had the energy to spare to look at the 2 subordinates who had gone to attack Chu Moli. With a glance, he couldn't help but be taken aback. That was because these 2 subordinates were actually unable to deal with a cripple who had no power to resist. It was only because there was a little child standing in front of Chu Moli. The little boy who was crying and acting like a spoiled child could actually block the attacks of 2 Xian immortals. Shi Baiyong felt that everything he had encountered on the floating island today was so incredible that he wondered if he was dreaming. Since when could a 7-year-old boy have the cultivation of a peak-level golden immortal? Furthermore, upon closer inspection, it was not because he had cultivated a special cultivation technique that made him look young, but because he was really only 6 or 7 years old. What kind of monsters were in the Xiaoyao sect? While he was overwhelmed with shock, Shi Baiyong heard the sound of a zither, which was getting more and more urgent. No! The sound of the zither had actually been playing since Guan Santong was hung in midair. Chapter 39:51. In fact, the sound of the zither has been ringing since Guan Santong was hung in midair. It's just that no one had noticed it before, even Shi Baiyong had subconsciously ignored it. Why did he notice it at this time? Because Shi Baiyong is shocked to find that the immortal power surging in his body has begun to become in tune with the sound of the zither, and is even faintly guided. What's going on? Shi Baiyong uses his divine sense to explore his body. Apart from the circulation of the immortal power and the sound of the zither, there is nothing unusual. But Shi Baiyong has a bad premonition in his heart. He says loudly, "Close your ears, don't listen to the sound of the zither." Several Xian immortal subordinates stare blankly, only now noticing that there is a melodious and sweet sound of the zither echoing between heaven and earth. And they didn't even notice it. Just as they are about to do so, the sound of the zither suddenly rises. Then, they see a figure flying out of the ruins and hovering beside Mu Yen. Two identical girls, their clothes fluttering under the moonlight. One is holding the 7 absolute sword, proud as frost. The other is plucking the strings of the zither, floating like an immortal. The sword-wielding girl slowly hooks up the corner of her mouth, her voice cold and sweet. It's too late to close your ears now. Between heaven and earth, a net weaved from the sound of music falls, covering everyone present. Big Dipper. Graceful feather. Prison of drawing ground. Inescapable net. Realm of stars. The Shin musician skills that have been prepared for a long time come crashing down one after another. At this moment, the people of the Xiaoyao sect, who have been showing signs of fatigue, suddenly become full of spiritual power, as if they have been injected with chicken blood. On the contrary, except for Shi Baiyong, everyone else has become clumsy and slow, and even the circulation of their immortal power seems to be bound by something. What's going on? Elder Shi, what kind of demonic technique does this zither sound have? Elder Shi. The frightened voice of his subordinate rings in his ears, but Shi Baiyong can no longer hear it clearly. He looks at the girl playing the zither in horror, his lips trembling for a long time before he can make a trembling sound. Tian Mo Chin, how could it be? Tian Mo Chin. You are a Shin musician. As soon as Shi Baiyong's voice fell, the attack of the 7 absolute swords was already close at hand. His mind was shaken, and for a moment, he didn't notice the thunderous strike approaching, and could only instinctively block it with his sword. However, this sword was only a feint. The moment Shi Baiyong blocked the attack, the tip of the sword suddenly changed direction and pierced through the throat of a Xian immortal. Puchi. Fresh blood splattered all over Shi Baiyong's face. Almost at the same time, he heard the screams of his subordinates. The various skills of a Shin musician can be superimposed with infinite power. But Mu Yen and these people are, after all, at different realms. Thus, even though she had exhausted almost all of her spiritual power and immortal power, she could only fight for a few breaths of time for her senior and junior brothers to win. But it was enough. Yun Ruhan and the others, who had been biding their time since the beginning of the battle, seized this opportunity without hesitation. Kill as many as you can. If he could kill a pair, he would kill a pair. In just a few breaths of time, 8 Xian immortals beside Shi Baiyong were killed. Shi Baiyong's lips moved, and the pungent stench seeped into every corner of his body from the tip of his tongue. He suddenly sobered up, and his eyes turned crimson in a flash. The immortal power within his body suddenly erupted. Boom! The powerful impact sent Mu Yen and the others flying, and they fell to the ground. Blood mixed with the melted ice, slowly seeping into the sand. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.